Testing, testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1. Look at the red light, see, 1. Is it on? As you can see, Miss Gandy, we have this questionnaire. It's rather lengthy here. Of course, this you'll also notice as we go through it that it certainly goes beyond legislation that would affect only members of labor unions. The way we did now, we can handle this any way that you would like. The way we did before, and by the way, let me say this too for the record that Mr. Ramsey is out of town due to circumstances beyond his control, and I'd like to express his regret at having to leave on behalf of him at this time. If you would like, we can, I can read the question, and then certainly we can get your views on the situation, and then after that, then if any of the other members of the committee would like to ask you any question, well then, if that's okay, we'll do it that way. Wow. The light's not on? Turn the volume up just a little, Don. Is the light blinking now? Might have been that the volume wasn't up.
Just when you picked it up.
Okay, we'll start with the first one. Of course, is a major concern to us, has been for some time. Mississippi is the only state in the Union does not have a Department of Labor or a similar department to function as such. As a result of this void, the welfare of wage earners is being sadly neglected. In addition to this neglect, no appropriate state agency exists to mediate labor disputes or furnish vital information necessary to an industrial society. If elected, would you lend the support of your office to the creation of such a department?
Excuse me, but just when you picked that up is the only time that light came on. It's not.
Testing, 1, 2. Turn the volume a little more. Don't tell you what all we're going to have on this. Is it blinking now?
It is now. The first time.
How about it now? Does it blink when I pick it up? Well, isn't that odd?
I guess you and me took it around today.
We'll push it over here a little as Miss Gandy talks and see.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. Are you picking me up now? Would you let me just open with this few words?
Sure.
That
Pardon me, I should have done this before I started with a question.
all right.
I'm sorry.
I appreciate the opportunity of meeting with you, and many of you, in particular Mr. Knight and I, have been friends for a long time. And I would like to make this preliminary statement. With having a long public record of some 20 years now, I feel that you will want to look into that record, because I have long felt that a person's future performances were best judged by their past record. And I would be most happy for you to do so. I feel like you probably already have in the past, to look into my record as a member of the state legislature, as attorney for the State Department of Public Welfare, as Assistant Attorney General, and as State Treasurer. In the years that I have been in public service, my policy has been to be absolutely fair to the best of my ability to all groups and individuals having business with me as a public official. All of my background would indicate to you that my sympathies have in the past, do now, and will in the future be with the men and women of this state who labor. My people primarily are small farmers. My father has farmed all of his life, and as a young man, he worked for $1 a day to supplement his farm income. And certainly that's something that I could never forget. My record will indicate to you that I have been friendly to you in the years that have passed, and I hope that as you judge me in the future that you will look at my past record. I have always maintained the policy of making no outright commitments when I'm a candidate, because I feel that it's a safe policy for all concerned for me to be elected to public office without ties and commitments. I was elected that way when I won the seat in the legislature. I was elected that way as state treasurer. And as state treasurer, I have maintained a policy of fair and equitable treatment to all persons having business with the office of state treasurer. And I think if you look into that record, you may find that it's the first time in the history of our state that that policy has been maintained in the office of the state treasurer. I say this to indicate to you that I hope you'll check my record. With reference to the Department of Labor, when I was a member of the state legislature, it was recommended by the late Governor Field and Wright in his inaugural address. Some of you may remember it. Some of us got together and prepared a bill that we thought would be fair to all concerned. The bill was not passed. In the years that have passed, I have had no particular urgency from any groups with reference to a Department of Labor. At the present time, I could not say to you that I advocate a Department of Labor at this time. I say to you, however, that I'll maintain an open mind on all pieces of legislation. My door will always be open to you, and I will have an open mind not only for what you say to me regarding that legislation, but from other groups. I will be absolutely fair in the appointment of committees in the Senate, so that each piece of legislation will receive a fair and open hearing by the legislative committees.
Are there any questions any of the committee would like to ask her with reference to the Department of Labor? Any statements you'd like to make?
I would like to ask her if she's aware of the inadequacy of the safety inspections pertaining to the industry in the state of Mississippi.
Well, I understand that's one of the areas that needs attention, and I would be glad to have you advise with me about that.
That's something, Miss Gandy, that we saw in the Memphis paper, May 24th issue, up in the northeast corner of our state there. And this is something, of course, that we have been concerned about. And certainly the Department of Labor would administer laws that would prohibit such conditions as this.
Well, any such law to protect workers along that line would receive my serious consideration.
I believe at this time it comes under the Department of Health, and he has probably 2 assistants for the entire state of Mississippi.
Is that the factory inspector?
And actually there's no law. See, this is just a policy of the state health department. There's nothing that can be enforced.
Well, in any area to strengthen that particular phase of our laws to protect the safety of our workers, I would certainly work with you. But I'm not saying by that that I'm sponsoring a Department of Labor. I don't want to be misled. I mean, I don't want to be misleading to you. But in that area, however you might get to it with proposed legislation, to protect the safety of the men and women who work, I would work with you.
Of course, another one of our thoughts is that labor in the state of Mississippi is just as important as the fish in the game.
More so.
Actually, Ms. Gandy, in connection with this Department of Labor, it seems to be that the picture that some of the groups attempt to paint of a labor department. You know this, if you kept up with it, I'm sure you have. Some of the other organizations in interviewing candidates have seemed to leave the impression that we couldn't have anything to do with the Department of Labor because this would be strictly a tool of organized labor, which, I mean, this is a thing concerns us because this is certainly not a Department of Labor. See, a state Department of Labor goes far beyond the boundary of union members. It's for all working people, and believe it or not, in spite of the argument here, a Department of Labor would definitely be an advantage or an asset to the employer as well as the employee. See, this is the thing concerns us.
I know it, and it would depend so much on what your bill recommends.
That's
You
true.
can say
That's
Department of
true.
Labor, and it could be pro-labor or anti-labor. And I think that's what has so many people confused over it. It's hard to talk about a piece of legislation in the abstract.
Another one of our ideas is this, that with the transition from an agricultural economy to an industrial economy with 436,700 non-farm people employed at the present time in Mississippi, that certainly an organization dealing with the welfare of those people should be taken into consideration, as well as has been true in the area of agriculture, in which we've had a Department of Agriculture for all of these years.
Any piece of legislation affecting the lives of that many people should have serious consideration.
Any other question or comment? Okay, we'll move on to the, I'm going to move this back just a little bit. Are we still getting the signal, Don? Number 2, in spite of the fact the Mississippi legislature was recently reapportioned, our lawmaking body is still not representative of the tax-paying public. What is your position on this subject?
Well, having been in the front of the battle for reapportionment since first becoming a member of the legislature in 1948, I would say that the presently reapportioned legislature was the best possible compromise that could be worked out at that time. And it has now been approved by the people. And I feel that it is the best that we can do at the present time.
Any statement, any questions any of you might want to ask her on that particular subject? Okay, we'll move along. Number 3. Mississippi was the last state in the nation to adopt a workman's compensation law. Since its adoption in 1949, little has been done to improve the lot of the injured worker. To the contrary, the act was practically emasculated with crippling amendments in 1960. If elected, would you favor the following improvements to this act? A. Raise weekly benefits above the present $35 maximum. I think we'll just take one of these at a time if it's okay with you.
Well, I'm going to give you the same answer on all of them, along the lines that I said a moment ago. Now, the workman's compensation law, as we all know, is complicated and affects the lives, as we've just said, of thousands of men and women. Any amendments introduced to it while I'm a public official will receive my serious consideration. I will be open to you for you to suggest to me, to advise with me, to give me the benefit of any information which you have and which I do not have. My door will be open to you for these discussions. I will see that the proposed amendments are referred to committees where they will receive fair consideration. But I do not feel that we can here this morning, by specific statements, say what amendments will be or should be made to the workman's compensation law during the next administration. I believe that any changes should certainly be, as nearly as we can, absolutely fair to the worker and to the employer, and keeping in mind also the interest of the general public, because this law affects the overall economy of our state.
I might add here, Miss Gandy, and maybe some of the others might want to add something to that. The thing that we are mostly concerned about at the moment is this ELF down here, repeal the crippling amendments of 1960. Now, of course, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know, I'm not too well acquainted with the act as it is now, but generally this is what happened. As I understand it, the language of the act was changed. In other words, the courts, according to the language of the act as it was before 1960, were more or less interpreted the thing rather liberally as far as the worker was concerned. But since the act was rewritten, or certain sections of it, this has left, as best I know how to put it, a certain amount of room for the courts to pin down on this. And actually what it has amounted to, in some cases we have even, since these amendments, we have had people who actually drawed, if I'm wrong, you all correct me, as little as $3 a week as compared to possibly $30 or $35 before, simply because of the change in the language of this agreement. Am I right in this?
Right, I think Marvin's correct.
Marvin probably is fairly well familiar with this. He's had quite a bit of experience. If there's something you'd like to add, Marvin.
I think that's pretty well
Hard case.
covered it.
Almost everything.
There's a situation that exists now wherein you have to actually employ an attorney and pay the fees in order to get what we previously got through other channels without too much litigation, too much trouble, and of course the worker receiving the full amount as was really intended for it. We could go into a lot of these, and I'm not an expert on it either. But we as representing people, we try to advise our people, and we can have people heard, and we know about those instances, and there must be others that we don't know about, and actually it affects and there again, that affects the non-union worker just like it does anybody else. We're actually carrying the ball in this regard for all the people that are employed, which a lot of people haven't appreciated.
Well, if you establish with me or convince me that there's an inequity for the working man and woman, you'll have my help in correcting it.
The very things that he said there, Miss Gandy, is why we ask this question. Make employer insurance carrier liable for attorney fees when worker has to resort to courts for relief. You see, this has got to where it's almost impossible to handle it without this. And there's one other thing I'd like to point out here while we're on this. There seems to be some confusion about this. This D, allow worker freedom of choice of doctor.
I've heard a lot of discussion of that, and I'm like you. Explain
now,
to
why
me.
the reason for our deep concern here is that I know, recalling back to the other day when we talked to the candidates for governor, I think they all, without exception, when Mr. Ramsey asked this question, said, well, don't the worker have freedom of choice of doctor? Well, no, they really don't. Here's what happens. Actually, they are supposed to go to the employer's doctor, you see. Then they can, after that, if they're not satisfied with the diagnosis of the company doctor, they have the right to go to their doctor. Then what it boils down to is that worker is caught in a battle of professional arguments there, you see. It's what the family doctor says versus what the company doctor says. He says he is, and this one says he isn't, see. So that worker has to sit there and suffer while the medical minds argue over the thing. So actually what we are seeking here is to give that worker the right to go to his or her own doctor and avoid a lot of confusion and a lot of agony and worry on the part of the the injured person. This is actually what happened.
Well, it occurs to me that this workman's compensation law needs a lot of study now in preparation for the next legislative session.
It does. It sure does.
Which, by the way, we understand that some of the management groups, Economic Council or the MA or the like groups, have propounded this question to candidates for the legislature and possibly for other state offices. And they frame the question in this manner: would you be in favor of improving workmen's compensation? And there again, it depends on which side you might be on as to whether it would be an improvement or something else.
Improving it in whose favor?
What we want it to be is fair to all concerned.
Now, we'll go for that.
That's
What it's fast becoming is an employer's liability rather than a worker's compensation.
That's exactly
It
right.
bars them from any fear of suit and damage. Yet it restricts the worker benefits.
Are there anything further on this subject?
On this deed, we within the manufacturing branches have had considerable trouble with this since the change of this law about not allowing you to use your document and having to use the company document. There's never a week passes or a month anyway that I don't run into this problem. The people are not familiar with it because up until this 60 change, everywhere they could use it. And since that time, by having to use a company doctor, I think all of us realize that some of the companies' doctors that they employ are not general practitioners or are general practitioners and wouldn't cover specific instances where people are hurt on the job. This is one area I'd love to see corrected.
Okay. Rule number 4, the future progress and welfare of our state may well depend upon the education of our youth. Unfortunately, Mississippi has a lower percentage of high school graduates attending college than any other state in the Union, without doubt. This deplorable situation can be attributed to the lack of finances. If elected, would you favor legislation whereby the state would guarantee loans for college education to qualified high school graduates?
I'm of course not familiar with what program you have in mind there as far as details are concerned, but in principle certainly it's good.
Of course, you note we said qualified.
I know
high
that you
school
said
graduates.
qualified, and I was a member of the legislature when we set up the scholarship program for medical students. You remember that, and it served, we thought at that time, an excellent purpose. Of course now it's discontinued, but at that time it did serve a good purpose. I'm in sympathy with this principle. Certainly we could look into it from the standpoint of to see whether or not we could finance such a program. I believe next time, in the next administration, we should strengthen first and foremost the junior colleges. We have so many boys and girls who can go to junior college who cannot go to a 4-year college or university. I feel strongly about strengthening the junior colleges and adding vocational and technical training at the junior college level. That's one of the things that I want to emphasize and give priority to my efforts if I'm elected next time. I agree wholeheartedly with your first sentence there on education. In fact, I went so far in that first television speech that we're going to make again for you, to say that I felt that we should establish 3 priorities in the next administration: constitutional government, of course, continuing our agricultural and industrial expansion, and education, because I think education should be brought to the forefront. And I have said that I believe the education program should be handled first in the next legislative session, that we should give the total program priority and handle it in the early days of the session. And that would be my objective.
Are there any questions, any comment from the committee? Okay, go on to number 5. The purpose of unemployment insurance is to provide benefits sufficient for workers to maintain a reasonable minimum standard of living when unemployed. Mississippi Employment Security Act leaves much to be desired in this direction. If elected, would you favor the following improvements? Raise maximum weekly benefits above $30. B. Extend maximum period of duration beyond 26 weeks. C. Allow workers to qualify who are thrown out of work because of labor dispute after plant is back in operation. D. Remove unfair disqualification provisions of present law.
Well, there again, we have a complicated piece of legislation that not only requires state law, but that state law and the regulations thereunder must meet federal standards. I remember working on many of the amendments when I was a member of the legislature, when we had hearings and had people in representing all sides to try to work out what would be fair and equitable for the most people concerned. I would maintain that same attitude. I am wholeheartedly in sympathy with the act and with the protection it gives the workers. But as far as the specific changes are concerned, I would rather rest on that statement that I will maintain an open mind and work for that which will be fair, equitable, and beneficial.
One of the things that we are concerned about, particularly with this act as it is now, that is referred to here in D, remove unfair disqualification provisions of present law. What we had in mind there, in the act now, they use the word misconduct. Now, this word has been taken and it's been stretched all out of reason. The way it's written now, as I understand it, this word misconduct can be construed to mean almost anything. We have had a number of people who have been disqualified for their unemployment compensation because of misconduct, when actually the actual reason, as we could see it, could not be construed in any way as misconduct, but yet and still they take the word misconduct and disqualify numerous people. This is one of the main things we're concerned with about this. The way it's written, it can just be stretched in any kind of shape, you see.
Well, is that being done by regulation, or would it require amendment to clarify the law?
Yeah, they would take an amendment, I believe, to clarify the law and more or less put some specifics in there, kind of tie it down as to what misconduct would actually be. That, as I see it, this is our main concern here with this law as it is now.
I think an illustration would be after 3.5 years satisfactory employment, especially in the needle industry, continue rising quota, maybe 10% of the productive people in the plant meets quota. All of a sudden they start a wholesale movement of people, bringing in new people, training the old ones going out. They're deprived of unemployment insurance because of misconduct. Misconduct because you can't make quota. We have a few cases.
Well, certainly that should be corrected. In fact, the very purpose of the act would be to take care of those people.
That's true. That's the way we are.
Let me just make this as fast as a comment. It's true enough that there are some few federal standards in these state organizations that has to be met, but it doesn't get the job done. There are so few. The states are left up pretty well on their own on the administration of these things, and of course there is in other areas as we all know, some indication that if some of these inequities are either ironed out through amendments or administration, that there will be increasing pressure for more of the federal standards. And there again comes back to this question: if the states fail to do it, then the federal government is going to do it. So there, I think, would open up the field for a good argument that we could clean house at the state level without the so-called encroachment of further federal intervention in these things. That, to me, is a good point that shouldn't be overlooked.
I would agree wholeheartedly with you on that point.
All right, number 6, Mississippi's tax structure leaves much to be desired. Most of the state's revenue is derived from sales tax or other consumer taxes, which means that the bulk of the tax burden is being carried by those least able to pay. According to reliable estimates, the state will need $40 to $50 million in new revenue to balance its 64-66 budget. Assuming that you're in favor of a balanced budget, how would you propose to raise this needed revenue?
We'll lean back and get comfortable. Well, as state treasurer during this term, you know, I've been very close to the financial picture of our state. And it's certainly true that our cash balance now is running much, much lower than it has in years past. It's also true that we feel absolutely confident the present budget is safely balanced, and that gives me a wonderful feeling of security. We've had some low days in the general fund. It's true that some months we dropped to under $1 million in the general fund, but we have met every payment when due. We anticipate meeting every payment when due. At the end of each month, we have a good cash balance. We anticipate on June 30th closing this fiscal year with around $10 million cash balance. And now I say to you that we need a safe cash balance. But I say to you further that I do not believe in taxing the people of this state to maintain a larger cash balance than we need to run our state government. We feel like that when we close with $10 million this June 30th, that will be a safe cash balance. Now, as far as the end of the biennium, which moves you over to June 30th, 1964, it looks now that we may close with less than that amount. And we're not talking for publication anyway, but if the press were here, I would say probably 2 to 3 million on June 30th, 1964. But now, the way the economy is picking up every month, it's entirely possible that we may close with more than that on June 30th, 64, because each month we're seeing a substantial increase in the revenue coming into the Treasurer's office. We have been highly optimistic about it, and I believe that we should make every possible effort to expand the economy of this state to bring in more tax dollars under the present tax structure. And I do not believe that we should sit here now, these many months in advance, and say we're going to need $40 or $50 million. The truth of the matter is we don't know what we're going to need the next 2 years of the first administration. But I believe absolutely in a balanced budget. I am unalterably opposed to any form of deficit spending. I believe in maintaining a balanced budget. The beginning of the next administration, I think we should prepare our estimates on what our revenue will be. We should prepare our proposed budget. If it is necessary, I will certainly have the political courage to advocate the tax increases necessary to balance the budget. I would say eliminate first looking at the sales tax, because I believe the sales tax is as high as the taxpayers of this state should be called upon to bear. Under the last fiscal year, when we closed on June 30th, we looked at the figures, and the sales tax brought in 47% of the general fund tax dollar. and I think that is a high enough percentage of the general fund tax dollar to come from the sales tax. I would hope the economy would increase so that no new taxes will be necessary. But to maintain a balanced budget, we will have, if it's necessary, we will look for additional revenue. But I would say eliminate looking at the sales tax and look at all of the other tax structure first.
Excuse me.
We may be able to do some economizing. There's some areas in our state departments, in particular I felt like in the area of state travel, state telephone, there are places in the administrative budgets of these state departments where we could save some money. And I believe fully that the experience that I've had as state treasurer, looking at all of these state departments and their accounts and their budgets and the way they spend their money, I think it would be of tremendous help to me if I were elected lieutenant governor, because I would have detailed information on state finances, the way the revenue comes in the office, the way it's spent, and the way they're presently spending it, that would help me work with the legislative committees, the finance committee of the Senate, and the budget commission, which is the overall budget commission, in planning our financial program for the next administration.
In other words, you would be opposed to any increase in sales?
Yes, I would. Because I believe that if we have to raise new money, there are other areas where we could raise it.
I wonder if she would like to comment on health. I realize that's...
Well, now, I hadn't got that. Let me
Yeah,
read
we
it.
hadn't
You
got
read
that
it. You
far.
read ahead of me.
I left. I tell you what I did. I quit too soon. And so I'm glad you mentioned that, Jack. We will.
We'll read these.
move on
That's
now.
an area of tax.
The state income tax, I believe, last fiscal year brought in about 13% of the general fund tax dollar. All of these, of course, are areas where we will have to look, and you have picked out the areas that should be looked at first if it becomes necessary to increase taxes, which I certainly hope it will not be, because it seems to me the tax burden is mighty heavy now on every Mississippian. But these are areas where we should look. I would say first, leaving out your sales tax, which I have just said I was opposed to. These other areas should be looked at first. The exemptions probably should be given priority in looking at where we might find new revenue.
Of course, I work with a group of people that receives income from private utilities. The public utilities or co-ops are a constant threat, especially on or from some of the recent court decisions on city limit extensions.
A Winona case, I believe,
Clinton case.
and the Clinton case.
And from that, 13 co-ops, one separately and 12 collectively, released notices to all municipalities that they were ready to come in and serve them, and give them the same concessions, including the 2% of general gross revenue received within the city corporate limits back to the city for the general treasury. And that is the concession that the fire companies makes for the use of the right of way insurance. If they go and compete with private enterprise, certainly they should receive the same treatment as private enterprise, as we see it, for the sake of competition.
Well, as I said, I think these are all areas that where we would look to obtain new revenue if it's necessary, trying to place it where it would do the least amount of harm and where we would receive the amount of money needed, and it would hurt our economy to the least, do the least damage to our economy.
We're all aware of the fact that that is a strong political group in the state of Mississippi. To the right.
Any other questions or comments from the other members of the committee?
I would like to clarify this. Co-ops have served a real purpose.
When they were originally organized.
They're going beyond the scope of their original purpose. And it's time someone take them.
We take an overall look at the problem.
All right, we'll move on. During recent years, a number of construction projects financed by local or state funds have been manned with out-of-state workmen. Many of these projects were financed with bond issues supported by local citizenry who thought workers from within the state would benefit by new jobs provided. The only effective means to deal with a problem of this kind is to enact a state prevailing wage law. If elected, would you support such a law?
Well, certainly I would agree with you on that Mississippi people should be given preference on Mississippi jobs. I think that we can all agree on that. And I'm not as familiar as you with all of the need or the details of the state prevailing wage law. I would certainly give any such measure that you recommended fair consideration.
Mr. Taylor there, of course, works, and he comes from a building and trades organization. Marvin, if there's anything you might point out here that specifically I'd like for you to do it, because you had quite extensive experience in such as this.
Well, I would say this, to kind of get it down to specific. And I'm thinking now in terms of what happened, I believe, at the last special session of the legislature, in which it was decided that instead of the various colleges continuing to borrow federal funds, that there would be, I believe, a $10 million bond issue of some sort that would take the federal funds out of it and be financed by the state. Now we have in all this construction, the federal funds, we have a predetermined rate. And of course, with the agreement between contracting firms and unions, that's no problem. Because most of these wages are predetermined by evidence furnished as a contract between the employer and the unions. That's the basis on which the predetermination is made. Now, in the absence of a predetermined rate, it simply opens up the field for all of the non-union contractors to come in and pay any wage they so desire that they can get the workers for, which is anywhere from 80 cents to $1 an hour cheaper, say, for carpenter labor, which I represent the carpenters local union. And so, in that particular field, it seems that it would tend to break down the conditions that the fair contractors and the union people have labored and worked for down through the years. It would simply open up, say, for Mississippi State University, if, say, a $1 million project was on tab, coming up for bids, you'd have no standards whatsoever there. It would be in the area, under some of the other restricted labor laws, you can't organize those people. Mm-hmm. So that simply means that it is opening the thing up for the breakdown of wages and hours and working conditions. And therein, particularly on state work, there would be a great need, I think, for some standards. And the remedy, I think, would be a minimum wage or some means of setting a realistic wage. That would be a highly controversial thing, I feel sure.
Oh, yeah.
But we're fixing to face some of that right on the basis of this last, I think it was in the form of a bill, $10 million, in the form of bonds to bypass the usual federal aid. Of course, the idea was it would help tend to help keep the segregation. Comes into the race question again. But actually it penalizes a lot of people and will.
Yes.
And break down the conditions.
Any other comment? All right, we'll move on to number 8. Our form of government can best be protected by greater participation of the electorate. Many states have secured better participation by changing election days to Saturday. Several states have also enacted laws whereby employers must allow time off to work. What is your position on this matter?
My position would be that I would favor any change to increase the number of people who vote. I would rest my case. I have always wanted to rest my case with every voter that would come to the polls. And if changing to Saturday or amending the law for time off, I would favor any reasonable and practical change that we felt would substantially increase the turnout on election day. Now, I'm not sure, I'm not saying I know that Saturday would do it, but if Saturday would do it, or if amending the law would let people have time off, I wholeheartedly concur in getting people to the polls.
Well, there has been 1 or 2 states that have changed their election days to Saturday.
Has it
and
helped in those
increased
states?
It did, as I'm told. It did increase the number of people going to the polls to vote. And then another thing here that we of concern to us is that in all of our, as far as organized people are concerned, most all of our contracts, or if it's not in writing, at least the local unions have an agreement with the employer that those people that live far enough away from their voting precinct or their working hours or conditions would interfere with their voting after regular working hours, then they have that right to take off and go vote.
But they should.
We are referring here mostly to those people who do not belong to a union and where the companies will not let them off, you see, to go vote. And usually in Mississippi, Saturday is an off day. And that is one reason for our thoughts here. That most people, we do have those people that work round the clock. But it's usually considered an off day from work, and that is why we use the day Saturday.
Well, I think every voter should have time off to vote. I have strong feelings on that.
Let me add this.
Don't you?
Yes, let me add this too, and this again might be a little peculiar to the construction field. And since we don't have the absentee ballot to cover this particular group of people, we may have people in Texas or Louisiana or Alabama or South Mississippi. Well, you vote on Tuesday, we'll say. Well, that's the wrong time of the week for those people to take off and come home to vote. So they're just in
They
effect
don't vote.
disfranchised.
They're
right.
just in trouble, aren't they?
They just don't get to vote.
Any other comment? Okay. One of the major needs of Mississippi workers is protection against loss of wages incurred by non-occupational injury or illness. The prohibitive high cost of medical and hospital care makes it the most serious problem. Workmen's compensation insurance recognizes the need of insurance for workmen on the job. It would therefore appear that a temporary disability insurance law is the answer to this problem. Would you support legislation of this nature?
Well, there again, I'm not familiar with the details of that, but the way my general feeling about it is that I would not support it. But I would be willing to listen to your arguments, of course.
I'd like to inject this. There is a trend for an insured income plan with a private insurance company.
That would take care of that
Now,
problem.
just as workers' compensation is. Matter of fact, I was in negotiation last week. It's not as expensive as you would think.
Is that?
Certainly is, Mayor.
Well, it's
People
an-
are sick.
It's an area of real problem.
Recognize too that there has to be some strict limitations on what beer is. That's entirely.
All right. Top flight school teachers are absolutely necessary if our children are to receive the best in education. We have no right to expect skilled and dedicated teachers to remain in our schools unless we are willing to pay them a living wage. In spite of the fact that our teachers received some recognition by the last legislature, their salaries are still far below the average paid by most of the other southern states. They are pitifully low compared to the national average. Are you in favor of increasing teachers' pay up to the average for southern states?
I'm definitely in favor of our teachers being increased up to that average. I could not sit here and tell you that it will be done in the next administration if I'm elected. I say that I will do all in my power to increase them in accordance with the revenue available. And I would like to repeat here that I think the plan for education at every level, our educational program, which would include your salaries for your school teachers and would include your strengthening of your junior college program, I would like to see that program handled in the early days of the session and given priority in the legislative session.
Are there any questions, men of the committee on that? All right. The labor laws of Mississippi fail to provide adequate protection for children employed in intrastate commerce. In view of the fact that Mississippi's economy moving from agrarian to industrial, it is imperative that our child labor laws be updated. Are you in favor of improving these laws?
Having been attorney for the welfare department, I do recognize the need there, and I certainly would be in favor of improving these laws.
Any questions, comment from the committee? A state employee has a right to job security as does any other worker, provided he or she is competent and efficiently fulfills job requirements. Stability and efficiency of our government demands that legislation be enacted whereby a person would not have to guess right in the governor's election to retain employment. To discharge a state employee to create a vacancy to be filled by a supporter of the winner is morally wrong and costly to the taxpayer. Are you in favor of a civil service law to cover all state employees except those who are elected or appointed under specific requirements of law?
Yes, I am in favor of such a law. I believe that it would not only give protection to these employees, as you've pointed out, but I think it would be for the best interest of all the people of Mississippi to save the investment that they have in these people in training them.
Right. That's
And
true.
there again, I point to my record. When I went into the treasurer's office, I did not ask a single career employee in that office how they voted. I checked their records to find what performance they were giving the state of Mississippi in the jobs that they held as bookkeepers and deputy treasurer and accountants in that office. Every person was retained. Well, I have had one or two resignations because they went to better jobs, but then I filled it with a person qualified for that particular job.
Can't say as much about
That's true. That's true.
And I
That's
think the
what's
chances...
disturbed us so much.
Yes,
is the
I know what...
wholesale shuffle that has gone on.
I think the chances will be good to get a state civil service next administration.
Mississippi is one of the 3 remaining states in the nation that still refuses to allow women to sit on juries. This prohibition is unworthy of the enlightened people of our state. The House of Representatives passed a women jury bill during the 1962 session of the legislature, only to see it die in committee when it got to the Senate. What is your position on this matter?
Well, my position on that matter is well known, and I was, you know, we passed it in the House one time, we passed it in the Senate another time, and I think real progress has been made, and I believe that we'll be able to get it in the next administration. I'm 100% for it. I was on a panel over the last weekend at the Business and Professional Women's Convention in Meridian, and we were pointing out that we hear so much criticism of Mississippi, sometimes we have to kind of say something to pick up our morale. So we talked about the fact that Mississippi was the first state in the Union to establish a state institution of higher learning for women, MSCW. And we talked about the fact that Mississippi was not only the first state in the Union, but led the English-speaking world in giving married women the power to contract and the right to their own earnings, which gives Mississippi 2 firsts for women. The only legal discrimination left on the statute books of this state against women is one that prohibits them to sit on a jury. And when that is removed, Mississippi's statute books will be absolutely free of any legal discrimination. And in that area, we have been most progressive. Now, isn't that good?
Just for a little humor here, I might add that
We need some now.
4 years ago, we in this room, we were talking to a candidate for governor, and he was asked this question. He says, "I'm going to tell you right now, I'm opposed to locking these women up in these jury rooms with these men at night." We laughed about that all these 4 years.
That's good.
All right, let's see. It's true that the last legislature increased maximum assistance to the aged and totally disabled from $40 to $50. It's also true that this same legislature failed to appropriate the necessary finances for this assistance. This failure means that a few of these people are receiving over $40 per month at the present time. If elected, what do you propose to do about this situation?
Well, you have touched there on a program that's very close to my heart, the public welfare program. And it's subjected to so much criticism, as we all know. But it's a program that I feel very close to because it touches the lives of thousands upon thousands of older people, disabled people, blind people, and little children. I have fought for that program all through the years, and will do all in my power if I'm elected to increase the appropriations. Now, I would not attempt to tell you that I know that we can increase them to raise everybody up to the $50. I doubt seriously that we could. But we can increase the appropriations to continue to raise that average grant just as much as possible on up to the $50. And I would hope that we could raise it enough so that those in the greatest need could receive the maximum of $50. And I shall exert all effort on the appropriations for that program, including all phases of the program, so that you will not misunderstand me. I'm for all the categories of assistance in public welfare.
Any questions by the committee? All right, we'll move on.
And particularly, but as we leave that, and particularly a program, see, there are 4 categories there. Your people past 65, you're disabled, you're blind, and your dependent children. And the disabled program has always seemed to be kind of a stepchild. The people who are permanently and totally disabled. And they enacted the enabling legislation before I was in the legislature, but it was not until 1950 that we got the first appropriation for that program, which was $50,000. It's been increased through the years, but it's still the most restrictive of those programs. And I would like to give particular attention to that program because those are your people that you mentioned a moment ago that are permanently and totally disabled for any gainful employment from 18 to 65.
All right. Number 15. And as democracy, the supreme power to govern is retained by the people. Mississippi's Constitution agrees with this concept. For Article 3, Section 5 reads as follows: all political power is vested in and derived from the people. All government originates with the people. It's founded upon their will only and is instituted solely for the good of the whole. Unfortunately, the will of the majority is often circumvented in Mississippi because the legislature is not representative of a majority of the people. Our neighboring state of Arkansas has an initiative and referendum procedure whereby the people can exercise control when the need arises. Would you favor a constitutional amendment providing for such procedure in Mississippi?
I'm not convinced of the need of such an amendment.
You're not?
Now, if you want to try to convince me.
Well, of course, as we state here in this question, oftentimes it's true that in the new legislature it won't be as what it was.
That's right.
But certainly, I think we'll all agree that the legislature is still not actually representative as it should be of the population. Now, and oftentimes we wind up with things that certainly we feel that is not that don't actually have the support of the majority of the people. Now, I'm not too familiar with the amendment that the Arkansas Constitution has that enables this, but actually what it does, it gives the people a right to initiate action by I don't know, it's maybe 6 or 8% of the qualified electors, and if they in a certain amount of signatures, and then this would place at referendum action of the legislature or action to demand that the legislature do thus. And so I don't know just exactly what the language of the amendment is, but that is generally what it is.
Well, I tell you, let's give this new reapportioned legislature a chance to amend under its regular process and work in some of these other areas.
That's true. We hope we're going to see a big difference in this in the legislature now. Are there any comments or questions? The per capita income in Mississippi is the lowest of any state in the nation. The chief contributing factor to this dilemma is the low wages paid to the workers who are not covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act, which we refer to as a minimum wage law. 27 states have already enacted state minimum wage laws. Such a law would do much to raise the per capita income and increase the purchasing power of the state's workforce. Are you in favor of a state minimum wage law?
Well, certainly, we're all in agreement on increasing the per capita income. I believe the last time I looked at the figures, it's now about $1,200 a year, or a little under. It's a little under $1,200. I remember I thought, well, I wish it had reached $1,200, but I believe it's $1,100 and $1,174. And certainly, that's one of the big problems in this state. And I have, in every speech I made these 4 years, particularly when I've talked on state finances, I have brought out that point. And I have seen people just sit back in amazement that didn't realize the per capita income was that low. Certainly we need to do all we can to increase it. I wouldn't say that the state minimum wage law is the whole answer to it. I do not know. I will not state to you that I favor it at this time. I will give it fair consideration if you submit it and recommend it.
I'd like to ask this question. Have you noticed any significant increase due to the national minimum wage law increase? Did you notice?
I do not know what the overall effect was.
I would like
What
to
was?
see that figure. I don't know. But as of July, we got an additional dime, so we might
A lower percentage of people of voting age are qualified voters in Mississippi than in any other state. According to figures recently released by the American Heritage Foundation, only 25% are qualified. Without doubt, the chief deterrent here is the restrictive poll tax law. This tax must be paid 2 years in succession to be eligible to vote in Democratic primary. While it may be argued that the poll tax keeps a Negro from voting, the record shows otherwise. When this law was enacted in 1890, there were 120,000 white voters. 2 years later, this figure had dropped to 68,000. Due to rapid industrial development, many people are moving to our state. Due to these poll tax restrictions, these people are being disenfranchised for a 2-year period. Such restrictions are certainly not conducive to industrial development. If elected, would you attempt to alleviate this situation? Specifically, would you advocate an amendment to the Constitution whereby 2 years poll taxes could be paid at one time?
I do not feel that this is the time to make any change in the poll tax requirement.
Any question, comment by the committee? All right, we'll move on to number 18. Women constitute approximately a third of the state's workforce. In spite of the fact these women are usually better educated than men, they earn a third less. In many cases, women can be found working side by side with men, doing identically the same work, yet being paid much less. Many states have corrected this inequity by enacting laws requiring equal pay for work equal to that done by men. Would you favor legislation of this kind?
I do favor such legislation, and it has now been accomplished on the federal level.
However, that is like you come back again
Yeah,
to your difference between your federal minimum wage and the state minimum wage. There's so many people that your federal law don't apply to.
And they are really the ones.
That's
Yes,
true.
and I hope that
That's
you all are working on that problem in your unions and with your groups for the women. I know you are.
Well, we have.
I know
That's
you
true.
are. I've worked on it from the standpoint of the boards and commissions that I've been on the state level. You see, I'm on 6 statewide boards and commissions, and I have worked on all of those to see that the women are getting a fair break in those agencies, and we found a lot of inequities. And of course, I believe in that in principle. As long as they're doing the equal work. Now, I'm fair on that too.
Well, it's a problem because I know from experience that even in the organized plants where you have a contract in negotiating, you do have those jobs that can be
Yes.
performed by women that are ordinarily performed by men, and they
Yes.
will even attempt in a contract to lower that wage a nickel, even 10 cents, maybe 15 for the girl. See, it's going to do the same work that has the same effect that the man would do. So it is a problem.
If she's doing the same work, I
That's
certainly
true.
think she's entitled to the same
I have
pay.
just finished negotiating a contract whereby for the past 15 years we've had nothing but men within the plant doing all the work. And at this negotiation, the company tried to inject a classification that would have been filled completely by women doing part of the work that had been done 15 years by men at 27 cents less than the present rate being paid for that job.
Well, I don't think that's fair to men or women either.
Well, we managed to keep it from being done, but
That's
But in the absence of a union contract, it would have been done.
Sure. There's no change.
Well,
I
you
mean,
did a
without
good day's work.
legislation.
The national legislation protects just that too. That was the last issue set.
It comes back to that idea of states' rights and the state's responsibilities. I think they go along together.
Right.
hand in hand.
Right.
Hand in hand.
During the last year, the regular session of the legislature lasted for a period of 5 months. Approximately 3 months were also spent in special sessions. In addition to being costs to the taxpayers, many members of the legislature have indicated they have suffered terrific financial loss and can no longer afford the luxury of serving in our lawmaking body. It seems that annual sessions of the legislature with a definite time limit would alleviate this situation. Are you in favor of annual sessions limited to a definite time period?
Yes, when I was a member of the legislature, we were the last ones, and you may remember that we submitted the amendment to the people. Now, I can't remember whether we did it in 48 or 50, but we submitted it during the field and route administration, and the people voted it down. But I think there are many advantages to annual sessions, the chief of which would be to handle finances, because it is almost impossible. Now, this fall, we're going to be called in to make our budgets, you see, and those budgets beginning January 64, running till June 66. And it's almost impossible to anticipate the revenue, to estimate the revenue, or to accurately figure the needs of the departments. I think there would be many, many advantages on annual sessions. But if we did go to annual sessions, there probably should be some limitation as to timing and which subjects would be handled. But in principle, I'm with you. And I don't know whether people would approve it or not, but I think there are many advantages, and that we probably should make an effort next time to head in that direction.
I think it would eliminate much incentive to call special sessions.
Yes, special sessions are costly, and as a general rule, the legislators, and I speak of them as having been one of them, you just don't have as good atmosphere for legislation, it seems, in a special. But having them only every 2 years, the special sessions have been necessary in many instances. But annual sessions would eliminate that necessity almost altogether. There might still be an emergency, but as a general rule it would.
We're losing quite a few members of the legislature because of the
Lost their business.
session this last year.
Yes, and
Absolutely. They cannot afford it.
well, when I was a member, I figured that it just paid my expenses, and I just had myself to support. And I can see how a man with a family who would jeopardize his business or lose his law practice
Sure.
couldn't afford to make that sacrifice.
As presiding and chief officer of the Senate, one of your major responsibilities would be the assignment of committee posts to the various senators. The passage or defeat of legislation is often dependent upon the complexion of these committees. If elected, before making committee appointments, would you consult with labor representatives regarding the makeup of committees that will handle labor measures?
If I'm elected, I will be most happy to have you consult with me not only about the committee appointments, but about any other matter in which you are interested, and I will be happy to have you do that prior to the decisions made by me. I have always maintained an open door to you and to every person coming to talk to me, and I certainly will not only maintain the open door to you, but I'll be happy to have you come.
Any further questions by the committee? Okay, the last one. Is there legislation you are interested in securing or preventing passage of not covered by this questionnaire? If the answer is yes, please elaborate.
Well, you have just about covered. You have covered such
I imagine
a broad
you feel like
field.
we've been from the Tennessee line to the Gulf of Mexico.
I think you have covered the general areas.
We'll have to mix most of it in.
Yes, my experience has been with you through the years that you agree with me that we must look at the overall picture of Mississippi and all Mississippians and look at what's best for the state and what's fair. On that premise, we are agreed.
Well, we know this, that certainly that affects other Mississippians, affect
Affects
the
us.
members of organized labor in one way or another. And certainly what...
Vice versa.
Mhm.
And that's right, vice versa, and that we are interested in.
I think that there's so much that can be done, and I will close with this concluding statement because I think you're a group that can appreciate it as much, if not more, than most other people. As a candidate for public office and as a public official, I have always maintained a completely free atmosphere of myself. I have never had any commitments or affiliations that could anyway conflict with any interest that the people might have, or that any person coming to me would have the feeling that I was affiliated with some other group. As state treasurer, I have not engaged in the private practice of law, and I have not been associated with any law firm. If I'm elected lieutenant governor, I shall maintain that same policy. In other words, I want every person and every group coming to my office to realize fully that I have no affiliations, associations, or obligations with any person, group, law firm, business, association that could keep you from having a fair hearing before me on any matter.
Mr. Gartin, come in upstairs.
Might say that, Governor, we appreciate your kindness this morning here. And at the outset, I'd like to say that this is our executive committee here, and that I would like to express the regret of Mr. Ramsey, who is president of the council, and due to circumstances beyond his control, he is not here this morning. And we will attempt to carry on in his place. Are there any statement you'd like to make in the beginning, or?
Tom, I don't have any statement to make. No, I appreciate this opportunity to meet with you all, and of course I have not had an opportunity to go over any of these questions. I had not seen this, and some of these questions I'm confident I'm not familiar with and will not be able to intelligently discuss with you, but I'm certainly glad to meet with you and discuss any of them I can as fully as I can.
Well, I might say for your benefit too, that Miss Gandy had not seen it prior to her coming up here, and neither has any of the others that will come today and tomorrow. So you even with the rest of them as far as that goes. Okay, we will start off then with number one. Mississippi is the only state in the nation that does not have a Department of Labor or a similar department to function as such. As a result of this void, the welfare of wage earners is being sadly neglected. In addition to this neglect, no appropriate state agency exists to mediate labor disputes or furnish vital information necessary to an industrial society. If elected, would you lend the support of your office to the creation of such a department?
Well, John, of course, I've discussed this matter with some of you and many of the labor leaders in the state of Mississippi many times previously, and particularly during the 8 years that I served as lieutenant governor. My position on this has always been, and I think it still is, that until there is a much greater divergence of relations between both management and labor and the public in the state, I think we've got a pretty good situation going that I would not be active in trying to create or set up a Department of Labor in the state of Mississippi at the present time.
I want to show you this, Governor, for your information in case you didn't see it. This is one of the reasons here why we naturally are concerned with this. Pass this down to the press, John, with the establishment of the Department of Labor. Of course, that is just one of the areas there that would that a Department of Labor should be concerned with if we had such, to administer laws to prevent such conditions as is referred to in this statement here.
Tom, I don't think there's any question but what, of course, we got to have necessary inspections of hazardous conditions everywhere. Now, whether the Department of Labor is the answer to that, or whether We have some inspection laws now. Who administers these inspections of industrial plants at the present time? I know, but it slips my mind.
The only thing we have, Governor, is a procedure that's been adopted
Yeah.
by the state health department.
Yeah.
There's no law, as I understand it, that
Yeah.
actually anything that's enforceable, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They do it. It's a procedure they've established. And I'm told, if my information is correct, that they have one inspector and one assistant to cover the
Yeah.
entire state of Mississippi.
Mhm. Well, that certainly needs to be strengthened. I'll agree on that. Tom, I mean, I think you all know my position that I want to be fair and that I'm going to be forthright with you on any of these things that I can. I think you know that I have always been helpful where I could be. Willie Hines, of course, has gone through this many times with me in the old days on the thing. I want to see laws that will certainly stamp out things like this. But whether it's the Department of Labor that's necessary to do it now or not, I just do not know. I mean,
Well, of course, here's one thing that I might point out. We all know, I think, what we're talking about. However, there seems to be some mistake in Mississippi on the part of a lot of people as to actually what a State Department of Labor as such would be. Now, there seems to be the opinion in some circles that a State Department of Labor would be the tool solely of organized
Yeah.
labor, which this is not true. This would be strictly a State Department of Labor in the
Yeah.
strictest sense, not only for the benefit of members of organized labor, but all people that work for labor.
yeah.
It would also be an advantage to the employer at business as well as labor.
Mm-hmm.
In compiling statistics of various kinds, and mediating labor disputes, Employment Security Commission, workmen's compensation, could all be incorporated in a State Department of Labor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I read just yesterday where a candidate for public office, and incidentally not in your race,
Yeah.
has said that the establishment of a Department of Labor would only serve to harass business.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is certainly not a Department of Labor as it should be.
Yeah.
I'm saying this because I feel that there's a tremendous misunderstanding here as to
That's
actually
right.
what a Department of Labor would be. Certainly, it's not a tool of organized labor by no stretch of the
Yeah.
imagination. And at any rate, the establishment of the Department of Labor wouldn't have to be called a Department of Labor. Maybe it would be a Department of Labor and Commerce, a Department of Industrial
Yeah.
Relations, something of this kind. Okay, are there any questions from any members of the committee? Any comments you'd like to make on this particular subject? All right, we'll go on. In spite of the fact the Mississippi legislature was recently reapportioned, our lawmaking body is still not representative of the tax-paying public. What is your position on this subject?
Well, I don't quite understand the question there, frankly. I mean, I don't. I think we've done a good job in reapportioning the legislature, so I think it's about as near as we could expect to get under the circumstances. Now, frankly, I don't think that the mere fact that one man pays more taxes than another pays ought to give him more voice in government. I mean, I do not believe that. I think that whether we're rich folks or whether we're poor folks, we ought to have a voice in the administration of our state government, or in fact of all government. And I don't know. I just don't know what you mean here by the legislature not being represented the tax-paying public. I mean, I would assume that, for instance, Hinds County pays more taxes probably than any other county in the state. I don't think they ought to have additional representatives because of the fact that they pay more taxes, for instance, than my county of Jones pays, or that the county of Simpson pays, or something like that. I think it ought to be on a population proposition more than on the ability of the county to pay or the person to pay.
Well,
if that's the meaning of the question.
Well, yes, actually, we realize that this last reapportionment is certainly more representative
That's
of the
right.
population, we'll say. However, we don't feel that it's still that it's apportioned in this truest
Yeah.
sense, according to population, as of this time.
I think it's a tremendous step in the right direction and a tremendous step forward. And I think when we stop to realize that for 72 years, we didn't get
Right.
to first base on the thing, we have to admit that it's a step in the right direction.
We wondering if the state maybe shouldn't go forward with this, as if we have it, on their own initiative, rather than to do it under the guns of possible federal intervention.
Well, you mean if they should try now to more truly?
I think that we all recognize the fact, the reason we have it, and the reason that we have it liberalized to this extent, has been not through initiative of people in the state, except as it was brought to bear, pressure brought to bear from federal government. So I think we could take our choice. We could go forward if it's found to be necessary, rather on our own steam rather than federal pressure.
Well, of course, I think it's when we get, when you take a county like, well, I'll use Harrison. They've had, I believe, two representative and a half of a senator. And when you give them now, what have they got down there? Six?
Six.
When
And
you
a
give
senator.
them 6 House members and a full senator, I think you've got to admit that you've gone a far piece in correcting an inequitable situation.
That's right.
And a situation that for 70 years, at least 70 years, has been a matter of concern and a matter of both litigation and agitation. And I doubt, frankly, if even in the courts now, they would upset the reapportionment of the Mississippi legislature on this formula that it now is. It may be something to work on again in 10 years. Now, I will say this. I think that we ought to face up to the proposition that every 10 years after the federal census, as the writers of our Constitution of 1890 obviously intended them to do, I think then we ought to, from now on, we ought to face up to the fact that the population shift, and the reapportionment ought to be a matter of course rather than a matter of political agitation over half a century to get a wrong corrected.
Right. Any other question from the committee? All right. Number 3. Mississippi was the last state in the nation to adopt a workman's compensation law. Since its adoption in 1949, little has been done to improve the lot of the injured worker. To the contrary, the act was practically emasculated by crippling amendments in 1960. If elected, would you favor the following improvements to this act? A. Raise weekly benefits above the present $35 maximum. B. Extend maximum period beyond 450 weeks. C. Extend benefits to widow until remarriage. D. Allow worker freedom of choice of doctor. E. Make employer or insurance carrier liable for attorney fees when worker has to resort to courts for relief. F. Repeal the crippling amendments of 1960.
Well, let's skip that and come back to it and have a full discussion on that whole thing.
Okay. Number 4, the future progress and welfare of our state may well depend upon the education of our youth. Unfortunately, Mississippi has a lower percentage of high school graduates attending college than any other state in the Union. Without doubt, this deplorable situation can be attributed to the lack of finances. If elected, would you favor legislation whereby the state would guarantee loans for college education to qualified high school graduates?
Gentlemen, I have always favored, and this was one of the planks in my platform 4 years ago, that we ought to have some type of college loan fund in Mississippi to help qualified high school graduates attend the colleges in this state. A scholarship program is what I was trying to think of. I think one of the greatest problems that we have is bridging that gap from a high school to a college campus. I think once a deserving boy gets on the campus, if he has a little help, he'll be able to pretty well work his way through college. But what I advocated before and what I still favor in this state is a program that would say allow a boy for his freshman year. I don't mean all the high school graduates, but I mean qualified. It would have to be limited, I realize, for a long time in the state because of the financial ability of the state to do it. But if you had, we'll say, 10 scholarships for a county based on a population basis, where with no political appointments given, where on a scholarship basis a boy could borrow, say, $500 his freshman year, and I believe in the race 4 years ago I said reduce that to $400 his sophomore year on the theory that he'd be able to work a little bit, reduce that to about $300 his junior year and a little bit his senior year, that most of them would be able to get through school. And there's a lot of good boys and girls both in this state now that just cannot, as a country graduate, as a town graduates for that matter, they have no connections, they don't know how to go about getting help at the college, and they have no way in the world to jump from this high school campus to the college campus. And if the state had a scholarship fund there and put them up there, they'd never leave. I'm very much interested in that program, very much.
Any question, comment from the committee? All right. The purpose of unemployment insurance is to provide benefits sufficient for workers to maintain a reasonable minimum standard of living when unemployed. The Mississippi Employment Security Act leaves much to be desired in this direction. If elected, would you favor the following improvements? A, raise maximum weekly benefits above $30. B, extend maximum period of duration beyond 26 weeks. C, allow workers to qualify who are thrown out of work because of labor dispute after plant is back in operation. D, remove unfair disqualification provisions of present law.
If you all don't mind, let's skip that one, too,
All
and
right.
I'll get into a full discussion of both of these subjects with you.
All right. Mississippi's tax structure leaves much to be desired. Most of the state's revenue is derived from the sales tax and other consumer taxes, which means that the bulk of the tax burden is being carried by those least able to pay. According to reliable estimates, the state will need $40 to $50 million in new revenue to balance its 64-66 budget. Assuming that you're in favor of a balanced budget, how would you propose to raise this needed revenue? And then we go on down. What is your position in regards to the following items? A, revision of state income tax laws whereby the wealthy and corporation would carry more of the tax burden. B, further increase in general sales tax. C, increase in severance tax. D, legislation requiring uniform assessment of real estate. E, closing present tax loopholes on finance company, cattle, timber, utilities, and etc. F, taxing so-called cooperatives who are in competition with a legitimate enterprise. G, removal of sales tax from food, clothing, and medicine.
Well, I can't sit here and just say exactly in a race like this what increases in taxation are needed. Let me say this: I first and for a balanced budget, and I never have been one who thought you ought to go up there and vote for appropriations unless you had the courage to vote for the revenue with which to support it. Now, I've said all over the state in my little remarks in this campaign, and I am still of this opinion, that we're going to have to do sort of a combination of things in order to properly finance government for the next 4 years. I think that some of the loopholes in the present tax laws are going to have to be plugged. I think some exemptions are going to have to be repealed. I think we're going to have to be very cautious on the amount of money that we spend, and while I don't think there's any reasonable anticipation of cutting off a whole lot from our present budget, because most of the budget goes, as you gentlemen know, to homestead exemption, public education, welfare, the mental hospitals, and in those four things alone, you make up about 75% of your budget. Well, we know you can't cut those things much. Now, there may be some areas of the welfare program it can be reduced. As you all know, this support of illegitimate children is a very controversial thing, and I think that reins could be tightened on that some. We might be able to save a little money on it. And there may be some of the fringe programs in the welfare program that we can cut down some, but overall it goes to old age assistance and the blind, and nobody wants to cut that. But my point is, I think we're going to have good conservative administration of our money during the next 4 years. I think we're going to have to hold expenditures down where we can. I think we're going to have to close up some of the loopholes, and then we're going to have to, even with that, we're probably going to have to raise some taxes. Now, I don't know. I have not been in on the scene these 4 years. I could not sit here and off the cuff say just how fast the revenue program is increasing. I do say I think we're going to have to put on some new revenue. I'm not in favor of increasing the general sales tax. I think the sales tax is a good thing to a point, but I think you might say a 4% sales tax is as high as it should be. I'm not for that. Now, increasing severance taxes, I don't know just exactly what the severance tax is now. For instance, on timber, I'm not in a position to say whether I'd be in favor of increasing it or not, or the severance tax on oil and gas. I'm not familiar, as I sit here just off the cuff, on what it is. I think the legislation requiring uniform assessment of real estate has great merit to it. It's a difficult thing to do. We might have to start some program in that direction. But now when you get right down to it, and this is the thing that bothers me, and I don't want to make a speech on every one of these, but this thing that bothers me, when you get a uniform assessment of real estate, the story in most of these cities has been that you don't just you make it uniform, that you actually wind up with an increase. And whether it's in the form of uniform assessments on real estate or just putting extra mills on, it can mighty easily result in a general overall tax raise for you people. And that, of course, is the thing we want to stop if possible. I would not be at all surprised if there will not be a very serious effort made to do it, and if a good law could be worked out, I certainly would not oppose it. Now, when we say close loopholes on finance companies, cattle, timber, and utilities, of course, I do not know exactly what we refer to. I'll say this: if there are inequities in there, then there's an opportunity to close those loopholes on the thing. I'm not ready to say that the co-ops just don't pay any taxes yet. I know that that's a controversial thing, but I'm not just ready to say that they're now getting by tax-free, and I would not say today that I was in favor of changing the laws on that. Now, when it comes down to removal of sales tax on food, clothing, and medicine, it's a very good thing. Many of the states already have it. As a practical matter, I would support it if we could afford it in the state. But I think, in all honesty to you all, that I must say that you all know, as I do, that with a financial situation like it is, I doubt seriously if you could get any further exemptions in the present sales tax law, even to include food, medicine, and clothing. Now let me see, we skipped one up here, didn't we? Revision of the state income tax laws whereby the wealthy corporations would carry more of the tax burden. Well, the income tax reduction program that's now in effect in the state of Mississippi seems to be popular. It seems to be popular in bringing additional industry into the state of Mississippi. I would hate to see an increase in the income tax at the present time that would thaw it or would stop the industrial tempo that's now underway in the state. I think this, I said a moment ago that I thought our revenue program had to be a hodgepodge of cutting out, of plugging up some of the loopholes. And I'll say now, I'll commit myself now, that I'm in favor of plugging up some of the loopholes. To sit here and say which ones, A, B, C, I cannot do it unless I had the budget and saw the revenue bills and saw just exactly what each one was. But I think that's the first place that we must start. The second is, I am definitely against an increase in the sales tax. I would hate to see the income tax raised back and therefore stop our industrial program. And I think that probably that our greatest hope in financing state government in Mississippi is increased payrolls or increased industry in this state with more jobs for more of our people, and therefore more money in our state treasury with which to finance the things that we want. But I'm thoroughly convinced that for 2 or 3 sessions of the legislature, we may have to have a general hodgepodge of finance in order to sustain a balanced budget, which I favor.
Are there any questions, comments, committee? All right, we'll move on to number 7. During recent years, a number of construction projects financed by local and state funds have been manned with out-of-state workmen. Many of these projects were financed with bond issues supported by local citizenry who thought workers from within the state would benefit by new jobs provided. The only effective means to deal with a problem of this kind is to enact a state prevailing wage law. If elected, would you support such a law?
And Tom, you explain to me just a little bit fuller now what it would do, and then I'll give you a yes or no answer.
Marvin, I'm going to let you do that since Marvin's had more experience with this particular type of operation because he comes out of building
Yeah.
trade organizations which this directly affects.
Well, of course, that doesn't qualify me as an expert by no means. We just might point out this, that on projects that carry federal funds, we have and do have the privilege of furnishing evidence of what the local prevailing wage is, and it's so predetermined prior to bid dates by the Federal Department of Labor. Now, in the absence of those funds, and on other public works, we come to the question of the inequities that could exist in that field by virtue of the fact that the unorganized or employer works open shop can come in and undercut the fair employer and thereby break down wages and working conditions that has been established down through the years by virtue of the fact that there was a good relationship between workers and the fair contractor. And of course we think that if say the work that is led by the building commission, for instance, on the college campuses, that's just one example.
Well, don't they have that program in now?
No, there's no state minimum. It's just whatever a contractor comes in and what he can get the workers for. And in some instances, it might be $1 an hour cheaper than the established wage between the unions and the fair contractors. So we think that would definitely help in that direction. It would put the competition on some other basis rather than at the expense of the worker. You might do it in management. If one could be more efficient builder, you might buy materials, but let the competition be in some of those fields rather than at the expense of the fellow that actually goes out there and does the hard labor.
I would not go as far as to say that I would support, and not knowing any more about it than do now, that I would support a minimum wage law, but I certainly think that the Mississippi workmen ought to be employed and ought to be given a fair, the prevailing wage in that community on the thing. I definitely think that. Now, I mean, I don't know whether I'm making myself clear to you or not, whether it's by law or state contracts or through the building commission or what, but I think the Mississippi workmen ought to be protected, and I don't think they ought to be asked to work for any less than the prevailing wage in that community is, if that's what you mean.
You see what happens here, Governor, on many occasions, a contractor from out of state will bid off one of these jobs. Well, as Marvin pointed out, he's a non-union contractor. Well, he'll bring people in from out of state and work them for minimum wage, you understand?
Yeah.
And the people in the local area then, that don't realize a thing in the world out of the job. We had a situation in Heidelberg down there, where the new city waterworks was built by out of town, out of state labor at sub-minimum wages. Had we had a prevailing wage law, something that could be enforced, then this would not have happened.
Yeah.
But that waterworks was built with non-union, substandard wages, people from out of the state.
Well, that's not
It's quite an area here.
This
Yeah.
wouldn't be a state project, but the Mid-Street underpass here, 2 electricians work 3 days, the rest of it, people in Louisiana. Well, that's an example of what we're talking about. Actually, what we're saying is a state law equivalent for state projects to data taken national.
Yeah.
But
She'll get enthusiasm, sir.
That do what?
Like I say, this is very interesting. I'm learning something. I go like Brother Sanders.
We'll be here all day.
Yeah.
come back.
Well, I'll say this without trying to evade the situation at all. I would go along with some type of program to see that Mississippi workmen worked on these jobs, and that they were paid a salary scale that was prevailing, or that was the scale in the community. Now, when I was mayor of law, that's what I used to require. I'd say, if you come in and get this contract, you got to work, say, 90% of our local people on the thing. And then those people would sit down and negotiate with them on the price they made, but they knew they couldn't bring a bunch of cutthroats from out of somewhere else in there. I'd certainly go along with something like that.
Well, of course, in every case, you don't have a city administration, you know.
That's
to
right.
do this. Now,
That's
these
right.
boys appealed to the city council in Hattiesburg. They just stayed on the steps of the city hall. What good did it do? Cold shoulders, all they got,
Mhm.
see. So,
City of Jackson suffered it. Man, most of this huge water main, sewer, Georgia contractors, Alabama
I'll be doggone.
any other comment by the committee, questions on this particular
I
item?
might say this, non-union contractors imported their labor with them. Had it been an out-of-state union contractor, the local labor would have worked.
Would have worked. I see what you mean.
See, they have
Yeah.
arrangements. See, one organization to one state. You
That's
see,
right.
the organized workers have a relation and
That's
a working
right.
arrangement, but when it gets outside organized labor, then everybody's foot loose, you see.
That's right.
All right. Our form of government can best be protected by greater participation of the electorate. Many states have secured better participation by changing election days to Saturdays. Several states have enacted laws whereby employers must allow time off to vote. What is your position on this matter?
I would certainly be in favor of that. This is off the record, and cut that thing off now. Let me say this.
Situation now, as far as our unions are concerned, the organized plants and jobs, we have in most of our contracts, if we don't have it in writing, we have an agreement with the
Yeah.
employer that
Yeah.
those members who live so far from their voting precinct that they cannot go after regular hours, then the employer lets these people off.
Yeah.
But now, again, you have this problem of the unorganized
Yeah.
worker, and there's no agreement. He has no bargaining power,
Yeah.
you might say, and he's at the discretion of the employer.
I'd
And
be
if the
completely
employer
agree. I'd be
don't
completely
want him to
agree
go,
with
then
that.
he don't get to
Sure
vote.
would.
Now, you take the building and trades again here. You got carpenters, painters, brick masons, what have you, that work all over the country. Well, those fellers, on Tuesday, it's almost humanly impossible for them to be in Mississippi and vote.
Yeah.
Usually, Mississippi is a Saturday is a non-work day.
Mhm.
Now, we do have people. You take the boys at Masonite down there. You're familiar with their round-the-clock schedule. Well, it wouldn't matter to them particularly, but average worker has Saturday off.
Yeah.
So this is why
Well, my
we
point is this:
suggest
I'd be
that.
agreeable to anything. It would would give larger participation in elections. We all know that a democracy is, back in the old days when only the rich could vote, or when you had to pay your ad valorem tax, as a matter of fact, to vote. It was all an effort to sort of cut down on the number of votes and a few people could control it. I'm completely willing, and I'd go along with anything to give fuller participation in elections.
Fine. One of the major needs of Mississippi workers is protection against the loss of wages incurred by non-occupational injury or illness. The prohibitive high cost of medical and hospital care makes this a most serious problem. Workmen's compensation insurance recognizes the need of insurance for workmen on the job. It would therefore appear that a temporary disability insurance law is the answer to this problem. Would you support legislation of this nature?
Yeah, I would.
Are you aware of many plans that's being written now with insured income?
No, I'm not.
I say many, it is more prevalent.
Yeah, you mean by private companies?
By private
Yeah,
companies,
yeah.
Private premium shared joint.
Yeah.
All right. Top flight school teachers are absolutely necessary if our children are to receive the best in education. We have no right to expect skilled and dedicated teachers to remain in our schools unless we're willing to pay them a living wage. In spite of the fact that our teachers receive some recognition by the last legislature, their salaries are still far below the average paid by most of the southern states. They're pitifully low compared to the national average. Are you in favor of increasing teachers' pay up to the average for southern states?
Tom, yeah, I'm in favor of it. You know, let me say this. Now, y'all know that I've always been very friendly to y'all's group, and I don't want to be in the position here today and I've been in this thing for 8 years, and I don't want to be in the position here today of just trying to feather my cap here in a political election. Y'all know that I've been a friend of the teachers all the way through, and I told the teachers honestly 4 years ago what I thought we could do for them in the state and what I was in favor of doing. And the truth about the matter is they haven't been given as much as I said we could do. Now, there's no question but what we must work toward getting the teachers' pay in Mississippi up to the standard of the southern states, or rather up to the average of the southern states. That's our next thing that we must work for. Now, to say whether or not I would vote in the Mississippi legislature if it was a tie vote in 1964 for a teacher's bill that would put it up to that amount, I just can't sit here and say that I would. I'd have to know the financial picture of the state with this $40 million hanging out there. I wouldn't do it unless I saw some reasonable expectation or chance of getting the money with which to sustain that budget. But that is my wish, and has been through many years, that we can get ours on a level and quit this drain of our teachers. I talked to a man yesterday, said he was going to Birmingham, Alabama next year and work, and he's going to make $1,300 a year more than he was making in a pretty good city school system in Mississippi. Well, that's just depleting our resources.
Right.
And this is the answer to it. I'm in favor of it. I've worked toward that end. The time that I was in office, we increased the appropriation for the public schools from $50 million to $97 million, practically doubled it, and I'll go all the way on anything to increase the teachers' pay or improve the school system.
Are there any questions by the committee on this matter? The labor laws of Mississippi fail to provide adequate protection for children employed in intrastate commerce. In view of the fact Mississippi's economy is moving from agrarian to industrial, it is imperative that our child labor laws be updated. Are you in favor of improving these laws?
Definitely. In many areas.
A lot of room for improvement
Right.
there. A state employee has a right to job security as does any other worker, provided he or she is competent and efficiently fulfills job requirements. Stability and efficiency of our government demands that legislation be enacted whereby a person would not have to guess right in a governor's election to retain employment. To discharge a state employee to create a vacancy to be filled by a supporter of the winner is morally wrong and costly to the taxpayer. Are you in favor of a civil rights civil service law to cover all state employees except those who are elected or appointed under specific requirements of law?
I am.
Mississippi is one of the 3 remaining states in the nation that still refuses to allow women to sit on juries. This prohibition is unworthy of the enlightened people of our state. The House of Representatives passed a women jury bill during the 1962 session of the legislature, only to see it die in committee when it got to the Senate. What is your position on this matter?
Well, I'm in favor of the women serving on a jury, and I believe when I was up there, we passed it in the Senate and it died in the House, didn't it?
Something like that.
I recall.
I'm going to remind you of the same thing I did Evelyn a while ago. You'll get a kick out of this. We sit in this room 4 years ago, interviewed one of your then opponents.
Yeah.
Asked him this question. He says, I want you to know that I'm against putting these women in these jury rooms with these men. Locking them up with these men. That's what he said. Locking them up at night. I'm against it. You can imagine about who.
That's right, I can guess. I can guess.
By the way, he held the other governor candidates in suspense a long time,
He really did before he announced. He kept them in hot water here till the last day before he qualified. I declare.
I saw him up in Houston the other night right after he qualified.
Is that right?
He said, I sure did enjoy campaigning with you 4 years ago, but said, what do you think I ought to tell them this time? I said, Governor, you ought to tell them just what you did before. They laughed every time you said it. He said, they did, didn't they?
It's true that the last legislature increased maximum assistance to the aged and totally disabled from $40 to $50. It's also true that the same legislature failed to appropriate the necessary finances for this assistance. This failure means that few of these people are receiving over $40 per month at the present time. If elected, what do you propose to do about this situation?
Continue to try to increase the appropriation.
In a democracy, the supreme power to govern is retained by the people. Mississippi's Constitution agrees with this concept, for Article 3, Section 5 reads as follows. All political power is vested in and derived from the people. All government originates with the people, is founded upon their will only, and is instituted solely for the good of the whole. Unfortunately, the will of the majority is often circumvented in Mississippi because the legislature is not representative of a majority of the people. Our neighboring state of Arkansas has an initiative referendum procedure whereby the people can exercise control when the need arises. Would you favor a constitutional amendment providing for such a procedure in Mississippi?
I wouldn't say that I favored it, but I would say I do not oppose it. I have no objection to it at all. I think it has its merits. I think it has its place in it. While I can't sit here and think of any particular times when I think we have really needed it in this state, and therefore I just wouldn't get out and advocate it. But if it was so advocated, I would not oppose it. I think it should be a very fine thing.
The per capita income in Mississippi is the lowest of any state in the nation. The chief contributing factor to this dilemma is the low wages paid to workers who are not covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act. 27 states have already enacted state minimum wage law. Such a law would do much to raise the per capita income and increase the purchasing power of the state's workforce. Are you in favor of a state minimum wage law?
Gentlemen, I don't know enough about it now, honestly, on that proposition to give you all an intelligent answer on the thing. I just really don't. I don't think the 8 years that I was up there, one was ever introduced, was it?
Not as I recall, right?
In all fairness, I just couldn't give you a yes or no answer on that proposition. I don't know enough about it. I would not have any objection to looking at some state minimum wage laws and giving you an answer on it at a later date than one before the election. But I'm just not, I could not intelligently say whether I am or am not.
See, Governor, what this would do would be to take up, you might say, where the federal minimum wage law leaves
Yeah.
off. That's the group of
Yeah.
people that it would get to here, that work in the industry that don't come under the Federal Wage Hour Act.
Mm-hmm.
And consequently, these people are being worked for just, well, you know, just
Yeah.
what they can get by with, and this is where this.
Yeah, and I think this about it, and again, I'm not trying to be evasive on it. I think that all of us in public office in this state ought to lend the good graces or the influence of our offices toward the upgrading of the per capita income of our people. Now, whether it's by a compulsory state minimum wage law, I just don't know. I certainly would like to see the tempo of the state government in Mississippi be toward increasing, and I know there are many little bitty pee-wee industries in this state that are exploiting the people. I know that, and you all do too. Now, whether or not we would do more harm, on the other hand, to some little struggling industries that 2 years from now will be of great benefit both to those people who start off in work for a little bit and have no other work in that neighborhood, than it would be to say, well, you've got to pay this to start with, and therefore you'll never get started. I would have to carefully weigh out the good and the bad on it.
Any question, comment by the committee? A lower percentage of the people of voting age are qualified voters in Mississippi than in any other state. According to figures recently released by the American Heritage Foundation, only 25% are qualified. Without doubt, the chief deterrent here is the restrictive poll tax laws. This tax must be paid 2 years in succession to be eligible to vote in Democratic primary. While it may be argued that the poll tax keeps a Negro from voting, the record shows otherwise. When this law was enacted in 1890, there were 120,000 white voters. 2 years later, the figure had dropped to 68,000. Due to rapid industrial development, many people are moving into our state. Due to these poll tax restrictions, these people are being disenfranchised for a 2-year period. Such restrictions are certainly not conducive to industrial development. If elected, would you attempt to alleviate this situation? Specifically, would you advocate an amendment to the Constitution whereby 2 years poll tax could be paid at one time?
Well, I'm going to say this, that I'm in favor of the poll tax as a prerequisite to voting, and it's not, with me, it's not just on any one particular basis to keep this man or that man from voting. I favor the poll tax because it goes, as you all know, to the support of our schools. We're talking about up here earlier, increasing teachers' pay and all, and I think the poll tax is an accepted method of raising revenue in this state, and I would be opposed to its repeal. I don't believe that the poll tax, and never have believed, that it keeps any responsible citizen actually from voting. Now, I know this 2-year thing is a sort of an aggravation. I check myself again and again and again. Yeah.
Specifically.
There, once again, I would not oppose an effort to, or an amendment to let the 2 years be paid at one time. The main thing with me on it is that we get the money for the continued support of our schools.
Yeah, well, we realize that this money
and
is...
there again, I wouldn't say about my answer there that I'd get out and advocate it, but I would not oppose such a law. I can't think of any harm that it could do.
Any questions by the committee? Women constitute approximately a third of the state's workforce. In spite of the fact these women are usually better educated than men, they earn a third less. In many cases, women can be found working side by side with men doing identically the same work, yet being paid much less. Many states have corrected this inequity by enacting laws requiring equal pay to women for work equal to that done by men. Would you favor legislation of this kind?
Well, there again, I would not oppose it. I don't know how much this recent national law covers on the thing.
Well, there again, Governor, your situation is similar to your a law of this kind, a state law of this kind, as compared with a national law, is just about the same as a state
Yeah.
minimum wage law as compared to the federal minimum wage. You're going to have lots and lots of people that
That's
the
right.
federal law will not reach, you see.
Yeah.
Just to show you, just to give you a minor example of the problem here, even in our organized plants, we have a terrific job in negotiations of convincing the employer that this girl or this woman is entitled to the same pay if she is doing that job and getting the job done just as well as a man. We find ourselves in a real battle on occasion,
Well, I think
convincing
it's,
them that that girl's entitled to it if she's performing the
Yeah.
job as satisfactorily as
I
the
think
man.
morality
employed.
and honesty requires it, it dictates it, and if it takes the law to do it, I would not be opposed to it.
And of course, in the unorganized, well, they have no, I mean, there's no
Mhm.
recourse there. All right, let's see now. During the last year, the regular session of the legislature lasted for a period of 5 months. Approximately 3 months were also spent in special session. In addition to being costly to the taxpayer, many members of the legislature have indicated they have suffered terrific financial loss, can no longer afford the luxury of serving in our lawmaking body. It seems that annual sessions of the legislature with a definite time limit would alleviate this situation. Are you in favor of annual sessions limited to a definite time period?
No, frankly, I'm not. I think that the annual sessions have some very definite benefits, but I don't think that the benefits of an annual session are great enough to warrant a constitutional change on it. I have been a little bit impressed by this suggestion of Sullivan's, frankly, that the legislature meet as they do in Alabama and then recess and give the governor the chance to get his own budget in there. I think we need in this state to go to more recesses or adjourn meetings of our legislature and come back. Now, as I see it, Tom, as I have seen it down here, if enough of these boys will just simply get down here and say, let's buckle down and get to work, you get away from here the latter part of March. Now, we did that, frankly, in the Coleman administration. His first session, I think, lasted about, I don't believe we were here any longer than the middle of March. They were very short sessions both times. Here's what I'm afraid about, just get right down even to putting any limit. I'm not so opposed to an annual session if you want to come here every year instead of 2. And I think from a budgetary standpoint it could be very, very helpful, because we are now really, you're making up a budget, you might say, in October of 1963 here, to be presented to the January 64 session, that will really be in effect. I mean, that budget will start July the 1st, 64, and go for 2 years, or to July 66. So you're really reflecting in your budget makeup nearly 3 years or 2.5 years, and you can't accurately reflect what the business conditions are going to be. And unfortunately in Mississippi, once you make an appropriation, even though the revenues fall off, there's nobody who can therefore reduce the expenditures as the governor of Alabama can. If he sees the revenues are not going to sustain a budget, he can simply order a 10% cut, and you still finish up. But these departments, once you appropriate their money, they go ahead and spend it, and somebody else got to scratch their head and try to make up the red. And there's no question that, but from a standpoint of your budgetary or financial picture, a 1-year session would be advantageous. And I wouldn't sit here and say that I had any fight against a 1-year session. I think through the years, a 2-year session has worked well, and I therefore wouldn't get out and crusade for it. But here's the thing that I am opposed to. I am opposed to limiting any session.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing.
when he would be here, and if we waited till 3:30, he might not get here anyhow. Let's call the meeting to order and ask Brother Taylor to give us a word of prayer.
Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this occasion that brings us together. We thank Thee for this organization and for what it stands. We thank Thee for the membership that go to make it up. We pray Thy blessings upon the people that are responsible for carrying on the policies of this organization from day to day. We trust that as we come together, that the things that we say, the things that we do, the business that we attempt to transact will be for the best interest of the people that we represent and will be in keeping with our will and purposes for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
We have a number of items that I want to place before you for consideration this afternoon, and most of them I don't think will take too much time. We hope we can get through by 4:30 in order that Ms. Phillips can leave on time. She's got a problem. First, we need to set the time and place for the COPE convention next year at this meeting in order that we can begin making preparations and make reservations, hotel reservations, things of this kind. You know how this hotel situation is. If we wait too long, we might have trouble finding a place for it. You know what I'm talking about. So I'd like to place that before you. Now, in so doing, we have to consider the fact that we have certain limitations to work around, that under the COPE bylaws that we have to wait until after the deadline for qualifying and the primaries to hold this particular convention, which gives us a limited period between after the primary, before the primary and the deadline for qualifying, or at least after the deadline for qualifying and the primary. I mean, yeah.
What would that time element be?
Give us that.
Well, the Constitution, Brother Taylor, says that the COPE convention shall not be more than 60 days or less than 45 days prior to the Democratic primary. Well, it should be the first Democratic primary, but it doesn't spell out first. Said, well, we all take for granted it's first. Called Attorney General the other day, and he said he wished somebody would enlighten him on what the regulations were. You know. No, seriously, the first primary is Tuesday, August 8th. Of course, the second primary, 3 weeks later, Tuesday, August 29th. Now, the deadline for qualifying, according to my count, and I don't know if my interpretation of the 60 days or any of ours would be the same as the Attorney General. What it boils down to is this, that the Attorney General actually himself counts 60 days from the first primary back, and that is the deadline for qualifying for office. Now, according to my count, it would be at 5 p.m. on Thursday, June the 8th. But now, my figures have differed with Joe Patterns on 2 or 3 occasions before, see. But actually, he's a man, according to the law, that will determine. But it has to be within a couple of days.
Could miss it for you.
Now, the deadline for, well, this is not directly associated with this subject, but while we won't take it a minute, the deadline then to register in order that you can vote in these primaries is Saturday, July the 8th, 30 days prior to the first primary. We've got to that time to qualify people to vote. Now, this means, based on our COPE Constitution, that we can't hold a COPE convention before June 9th, really, if my figures, my 60 days, were the same as Joe Patterson's 60 days. See what I mean? The first Saturday after the deadline would be Saturday, June the 10th. We ordinarily hold these things, as you know, on Saturday to save local unions some expense. Claude and I have talked about this thing, and of course not knowing Joe Patterson's liable to come up here And his 60-day count is liable to be at the end or the close of the offices on Friday the 9th, or even at noon on Saturday the 10th, for all we know. So actually, the first Saturday after, to be sure that we are after the deadline, would be June 17th. And this is, as we know before, this really jams our business up and makes our affairs more complicated than ever. You know, to get our machinery rolling and take part in these various campaigns that we know we're going to have to take.
Pardon me, Mr. Reed, telephone. Okay, go ahead.
Claude and I have, this thing's bothered me, the way our Constitution is written. According to the Constitution, the cotton picking thing can be amended by the board or by the committee at any time. See, provided such changes are proposed 30 days prior to the date of the meeting. See, and right.
Yeah.
It seemed to me that there is a way to amend this cotton picking thing that would give the committee or the board a little more leeway. In other words, something to this effect that would say that the date of the state cope convention shall or can or may be determined by the executive board based at a time when they deem it the most appropriate or feasible. See what I mean? Not pin us down here.
In other words, what you said, June the 10th would be a better date than June the 17th.
But for all I know, Joe Patterson may give them till noon, June the 10th, to qualify. You see what I mean? This is really flexible.
Which
really
means you could go into a convention and not know who all the candidates
That's what I'm talking about. Well, 9 times out of 100, we don't know, but then some sharpie may get up back yonder and challenge us. See what I mean? Then we'd be in hot water. But June the 17th,
it'd be the earliest under the present.
Really, is the first day that we can think about having it and be clear of any possible misunderstanding or misconstruction.
I figured that way it
dates,
would be in the
understand
clear.
what I mean?
Because there's not going to be that much out.
Everybody that's going to run, I think we will have knowledge of the fact that everybody's running by that time. But
some of them do wait till the last day
this
to
is
qualify.
true to actually qualify, but they've already announced as far as the public's concerned. See, this does afford a problem. You see, you got the election on August the 8th, and there you are, June the 17th, getting things cranked up. You see. And this really makes it
Is the
rough.
Secretary of State's office normally open on a Saturday morning?
Yeah, if he wants it to be.
Well, that's what.
If the Attorney General says that this is
Ordinarily it's not.
ordinarily
Right.
it's not, but then
I
him,
thought maybe that might be a way out.
he'll keep it open. If Joe Patterson's, I said,
Yeah.
if his estimation that this 60 days extends till noon, June the 10th, well then that's what it'll be.
He hadn't already figured it out.
No, Dealers Burks told me that he said, you check with me
Looks like
next
he's going to
spring,
figure it
Tom,
out.
and he says, as I find out, I'll tell you, but I don't.
Well, the only thing we do is set it at, I think, the earliest possible date and make sure that we're right is June the 17th.
Well, I think that'd be the best bet.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to be out more than that.
Of course, if you get much later than June the 17th, then
Can't
you're going
go
you're
nowhere.
going to hit another problem. You're going to hit a slug. The plants will be on vacation. You won't get no
That's what I'm
delegates.
talking
We're probably gonna have some out on this.
Some,
what
but
I'm
you
talking
get into the last of June, the 1st of
Yeah.
July, and there's 2/3 of the state takes vacation at that
Yeah.
period.
But if we just knew what the interpretation would be, so we could go ahead on June the 10th, we'd be in much better shape.
Might give you another week.
Give us
quite
another
amount
week.
to.
We don't really know, see.
Well, can we get a motion on this? We can set the date, then we wanna talk about the place.
Well, I'll make a motion to
If we set it
set
on
the
June the
date of June
17th.
the 17th.
Now,
Yeah,
this is
Saturday,
the
June
state cope
17th.
convention, right?
Yeah.
Now, what we'll have to do, you see, we'll have the cope committee in, it's, like we did before, the day before. This means this will be on the 16th.
Right.
We'll probably have a board meeting the day before, or at least in the morning or something.
Right.
But I'll make sure that we understand it's the state cope convention that we're setting.
Right, for the
These
17th on Saturday.
17th, and these other meetings preliminary will be set prior to that, okay? Well, we have a discussion on that motion, any further discussion? Not all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed, motion carried and so ordered. Now, let's talk about the place. what do you think we need to hold it?
Is it a better place than Heidelberg?
Well, you know, last time we had it at Laurel, and because of the nature of this thing, I think it might be a good idea for us to hold it away from Jackson, if possible. And we haven't had a convention on the coast for some time, and you know, they made a bid for it at the last convention. It might be worth considering having this one at the coast, you see, because it will be easier to carry this one down than will the regular convention.
Yeah,
You follow me?
well,
Then we'll be out of the way of the Capital News Press, the Heidelberg papers, and all this stuff, because they're gonna have their hound dogs after us over here like they have before. You follow me?
yeah.
I don't know whether we can find a place better than that or not, other than the coast.
Well, the only thing I would say, and this
Out of
is
the way.
speaking in behalf of the people that's probably got the least money to do it with, on the coast, you got some people have to travel 300 miles to get
Yeah,
to the
all
thing.
the way from Corinth. This is the problem. This is it.
And that you may cut down on
Yeah.
your attendance.
Yeah.
Some of them may just, you know,
Do you have anything?
as far as
you
I'm
read in this
concerned,
big enough to
I don't
hold
care
it?
where you have it, but you
Well,
are
I
faced with this
understand.
problem.
No, we haven't got nothing.
There he is. Come in.
Why, hello, Jack.
I don't believe there's a building in Meridian that would hold it, Mr. Brown.
No.
See,
That's
that
the
old
thing.
hotel's practically out of business.
Yeah.
And, there's
That's
nothing
the problem in this thing when you start trying to, we limited in our choice. It has to be here on the coast as a rule. See, as far as
It's
facilities.
about the
are
only
concerned.
place you get being at.
We get.
Well, Hattiesburg, they haven't got a building.
What have they got in Hattiesburg?
You'd have to get some public building like a community center. They hadn't got a hotel there at all anymore. See, all they got is motels. They've done away with the last one.
Well, Schaefer, we are talking about the Coke convention. We've already
And the motels have a meeting room
set
that
the
big.
date. We've already had a discussion on this problem of setting the date. We gotta get this date and the place established so we can start making arrangements, you see.
How many people will
June
attend
the
it? Bob?
17th is the date's been,
About how many people would you figure would attend it?
well, around, what did we have last time? About 200, wasn't it, delegates?
No, that's at a regular convention.
I thought the Coke thing was smaller
It
than
is,
that.
it's about
It
half.
was. Of
We
course,
didn't
it
have the
looked big
280
because
this
we was
past
in a much
convention.
smaller room.
Laurel.
see.
We don't
You'll
have
see
a
it in the
whole
paper.
Yeah.
In Laurel.
We might go
Around
back to
100.
Laurel.
120.
I see.
Jack was on the registration desk. He
Sure was.
probably.
It's supposed
Well, if there's no more than that, you could use a union hall someplace if you had to for the meeting. But I think you'd run into a problem
Your PA
trying.
system is your main thing.
Right.
So that you see.
That's right.
June 17th.
June
June
17th.
17th. Now we're
But-
talking about the place, and of course, the problem there, we need to try to get the thing away from Jackson if we can. You looking for somebody?
No, nobody in particular.
Okay. Yeah. The problem is the fact that we don't have too much choice in this thing. It has to be Jackson or the coast for a group this big as a rule. Now, we made out all right at Laurel before. We had enough room in that hotel at Laurel for this thing.
There's not one in Heidelberg that would hold it. Since that old hotel, they had a room there that would, but it's out of business. They remodeled it for into a private office.
How about that ACWA hall? Is it?
Well,
right?
it holds.
What, Jim, what would be the chances of getting a community center?
Well, if you put it in far enough in advance, I think you could get it.
That auditorium would.
Well, that auditorium would hold 500 if you needed it.
You got enough motels around there.
Oh, you got plenty of space for rooms. You just don't have a motel with a meeting room in connection with it. It'd be big enough for a convention.
Yeah.
They just got a room that'll hold, well, some of them maybe
Yeah.
twice as big as this or something, see.
Well, on the weekend, those motels don't have too much business anyhow, do they?
No, you could get plenty of rooms in Hattiesburg on the weekend, especially with reservations a little bit in advance.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that'd be the place to hold it, actually. It wouldn't matter to me where you held it. The only point I was making to go to the coast, some people gonna have to travel so far,
Yeah,
they
well,
could
that's
cut down on your crowd.
This is the problem.
Well, Mr. Brown says nothing in Meridian. It's about like Hattiesburg. See, as far as the old Lamar
Meridian
Hotel.
would be ideal now if we could get facilities.
Well, you
It'd be
haven't
about
got-
halfway, you see.
You haven't got any place there, like you say, the hotel.
Well, it's out of business.
It's out of business.
There's
And-
nothing at the Ramada Inn that would accommodate 140
think so. I don't think there's a Motel Meridian that's got anything anywhere near like that. Not in my opinion. I've been to the Holiday Inn
How
and
big
the
is that
Travel
room
Inn.
in Ramada Inn? I was in that other night with this CWA group. That's a pretty good sized room in the back. I just wondered if they got anything any bigger than that. Even if it opens up into something else.
Meridian would be more
It
central
might
than
be
the
if
coast.
you could open up, make 2 rooms into one.
That's what I'm wondering
If
about.
it's arranged. Well, suppose,
This one in the middle of the building, on the back? The
This,
dining-
I don't remember the exact details of
On
that
the
thing.
east side is pretty big dining area, but I doubt that you could close it off from the entrance.
No, it's probably, well, then they probably have all their other guests in their motel use it too.
In fact, they've got 4 sections, as I recall.
Since
Front
you're
entrance
limited
and then the
on
wing to the right.
Since you're limited on the
Yeah.
weekend, that's not gonna put down that much, will it?
End to the left and then across the back. I was under the impression it was.
Well, they travel alone, see, is what you get
completely
involved
closed
in.
room across the back.
Some of them could go 300 miles, pretty good distance.
well, that's it. They have
A
to
lot of 'em
leave.
might rather do that though, to go to the coast. I mean, they might be ready to go to the coast.
If you want to stay on the coast, I'm not going to object. I'm
Well,
just pointing
no, I
out.
know what the problem is here. We
You
might,
don't know what to do to please.
we might
No.
need to leave, we might need to leave this, I think probably the best thing to do is leave it open a little bit and let us explore it.
I was going to suggest that.
And see if maybe we can locate it in Meridian,
If we find a
or
place.
in Heidelberg, or someplace. If we can't, then take it to the coast as a last resort. If you
I don't
wanna leave
object
it
to the
up to
coast
us, then we
personally.
can handle it this way if you'd like, but we don't know exactly what you got in Meridian. Meridian would be the ideal place, most
It'd
centrally
be more
located,
central.
you see. Now, I don't think they got anything, we talk about the coast, I don't think they got anything in Pascagoula that could accommodate it, so we talk about the coast, we talking about something like the Edgewater Hotel or
Right.
Buena Vista or something
Well, you
like
get into
that.
this too. Their prices along the coast
Yeah.
runs higher than even here. See,
Yeah, yeah.
for food and lodging and everything else, so it'd be more expensive.
Well,
There.
there's only one trouble I ever found about holding conventions on the coast. A world of delegates thought that was the place to go and have a good time and get drunk, and they never had no convention.
Yeah, but now you can get drunk any place.
Well, we might, Laurel is another possibility. I don't know, we might try Laurel again.
Well,
They've
try
still
it.
got that same,
Well, you got
Convention
Meridian,
hall,
Laurel, and
right?
Hattiesburg. You can try and see if they accommodate that, and which one can.
Well,
Carry
you
it
see,
there.
again, this is matter, you don't never know what kind of thing you're gonna run into with these hotels. We might need to have several alternatives anyhow, because the
you very
hotels
well
might be
could.
filled up, you don't never know.
Well, and on
That
top
was
of
one
that,
problem we had here, sitting at last convention, was the number of conventions in here, and that was one of our major problems. One reason we had to move it back like we did.
on top of that, a lot of them, regardless of the law or anything else, they're not open-minded on this race question yet, regardless of what they say. And if
Yeah,
you know,
this has to be considered.
Well, you know, the last convention that was billed for Meridian, I went to Lamar. The best he could give us was 125 rooms. I went to the Meridian Hotel, and they said 25. I said, well, that sure won't seat 400 delegates. So it had to come back to Jackson, repeat. And that's the thing. Now they ain't even got a hotel.
Well, we might
No,
have
that
to come
Hotel
here with
Meridian's
it
out of
anyhow.
business.
It might be, but I think it'd be good because of the publicity part of the thing, we could. And then, you know, maybe the next regular convention, we come back here. See? Well,
Well,
let's
it
see
is.
if we can get some agreement then, if it be, satisfactory with the committee. We can ask Brother Brown to investigate the facilities in Meridian, that we'll try Meridian first, you see.
Yeah.
And if we can't find facilities over there, then we'll consider one of these other places. Will that be all right?
Yeah.
In the meantime, we might check with some of these people around about how they feel about holding at the coast, like Crawford D's and these people.
some of them
from
is
up
so,
in
so far away.
Right, so far away, before we wind up with it on the coast.
Vicksburg's another possibility.
Vicksburg is
Might
a
think
possibility.
about it.
That's that thing over at Vicksburg is, the inconvenience of it is that you have to stay all over the place over there.
And then you go to that one auditorium up in the mountains.
Yeah.
Now, they run the price up. I'll never forget the prices of that 1960
Yeah.
convention.
No,
They
I
run the
know.
prices up as bad as they do on the coast. They really took us.
Well, does somebody want to offer a motion? Or do we just want to have an understanding? Is this agreeable?
Well, I think we ought to go ahead and have a motion.
All right,
I'll
put in a
move that
motion.
after the investigation by Brother Brown, if nothing can be developed in Meridian, it'll be left to the two top officers to decide the site based on
Try to
what
work
they can
something
come up with. Sure.
Okay, that's a good solution. We have a second to that motion?
Second.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Dude.
Motion carried and so ordered. Now, the other thing I think that we need to
No point
also
us having to meet
decide,
back.
in connection with that state cope convention, it'll be necessary for us to set up an interviewing committee. And I think the thing we did last time was use the executive committee as that screening committee, did we not? Is there- Yes, a quorum of the executive committee. Is this agreeable that the executive committee act as the interviewing committee this time around?
All
Yeah,
right with
let's-
me.
Let's put a
All right.
motion on the floor to that, and we'll get that in the minutes.
Well, I'll
also.
make a motion to that.
Motion by Brother Brown that the executive committee act as the interviewing committee for candidates running for statewide office in 1967.
I'll second
the motion. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried and so ordered. Now, let's talk about the fair project a little bit. I don't know how many of y'all got over and was able to get over and view the fair and saw our booth, but
I got there the last day, and it was the
Yeah.
best booth I've ever seen, Claude.
it was really good, wasn't it?
It was.
We think it was a real success, and we think that that we should make this well, I was going to say permanent project, but at least we feel that we should have a booth on again next year. Of course, Tom is going to call his committee together before long and handle this thing and get their views about the improvements and what have you, while the thing's fresh on their mind. But the main thing is that I felt at this particular meeting that the committee should take action on whether or not they feel we should have a booth next year. Then we can let these people know well in advance, and think we'll get better cooperation. I think the building trades groups in particular, if they know in advance, can put together an exhibit,
Right.
something they didn't have down to this time.
Right.
So what's your pleasure on that?
I certainly make a motion that we have a fair booth next year.
That we proceed to make
Sure.
plans for a booth at the fair next year. We have any further discussion on that?
I'd just like to ask
Yes.
a few questions. I'm a little aware of what happened prematurely.
Yeah.
Do we have any repeats of that?
The what? The original thing? No, didn't have anything?
No. No, and
No. We have any further discussion? Well, we'll talk about that later, we'll get rid of some motion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Now, in this, I guess you're gonna give us some leeway. Now, one thing that we're gonna have to do here is to get more space. This will cost us a little more money.
This is very obvious.
And, Tom, you wanna talk to them about this a little bit?
Yeah, I can. Let me get this out of the way. Jack reminded
The
me
Gartin
of
incident?
something. And, Jack reminded me of something, and I'll give you all a good laugh on me. It turned out that we needed a truck to go to Gulfport, Pascagoula Law, pick up some things. And I asked Brother Shaver several days prior to help me locate one that we could rent. And sure enough, he found one of his fellows had a nearly new 3/4 ton truck. Well, Jack was kind enough to come by my house one night, pick me up in his car, and we drive out west side of town to the guy's house. I get the truck, and I follow Jack out back to the house. Next day, I make the round to the coast and come back. Well, when I got back that night, Joe Mullins of the AFL-CIO staff accompanied me. We got back to the fairgrounds. They'd locked up. I had to run the man down, get the doors unlocked, put the stuff in there. And I carried Joe home out in West Jackson. Well, I pulled into Westland Plaza Shopping Center to call somebody, and I had forgotten the man's name who the truck belonged to, and couldn't remember how to get there to carry the truck back.
I tell this on myself, would you?
I'm not sure.
I tried to get on Jack's telephone at home. Well, I couldn't get on the line. Well,
That's the way the booth
I
look, Mr. Brown.
called the president of 605's
Well,
house.
that's all right, eh?
He was gone. I talked to his wife. I told her who I was. I said, Ms. Hendrickson, I'm in an embarrassing position. I've got a truck that belongs to one of the members of the local. I don't remember his name or where he lived. She says, where are you? I said, I'm at a Cohen phone in Westland plant. Well, she said, I'll tell you what, she said, Mr. Knight, you give Yeah, I think said, Mr. Knight, you give me the number of the phone from where you're calling and give me about 10 minutes. I think I can find it. See? So I gave her the number, and while I'm waiting on her, I called my house and got one of my daughters to come over with my card.
And show
I
him
says-
back way home.
I said, I am going to get this truck home sometime between now and breakfast, and I want you over here with my car, or I'm planning on going home sometime tonight. Well, she come over, and Ms. Hendrickson called me back. In the meantime, she had talked to Mary and Lily, I believe. And
I don't know, you're telling me something.
she said, Mr. Knight says, I think I know who the truck belongs to. I said, by the way, Ms. Lily, give it to me. And she told me to tell you that for a fee, she'd keep this quiet. Well, we had a nice laugh. Anyhow, I found the way out there. Based on, she really didn't know how to get there. She gave me his address. And I reckon a little instinct I had or something. Anyhow, I found the man's house, got the truck back home. So I just wanted, I felt it was the silliest I ever felt. I didn't know, I had a truck, didn't know who it belonged to or how to get it back home. But, it would, seriously, in connection with the fair project. Let me state this, and I think you would be interested in this. And of course, I haven't yet, Jack, got back around to Curtis and attempted to pay him for the use of the truck. He was hesitant that night, and I was tired, and I intend to go back and try to settle up with him. We've spent so far on this project. This includes the space, the various materials, and my expenses incurred by me during the week. $406. That's the whole works, as best we can tell. Carol and I roughly summed it up before we came over here. Now there's a little expense that we hadn't yet got the bill for, but actually we're well, I would say, under the $500 mark, which I think is pretty good considering what all was involved in this thing. And it was more than any of us thought, really. I feel it. I still feel it. But according to everybody that helped, we had some 50, I guess, odd members of various unions from different parts of the state that come in and helped us man the booth during the week. The organizing staff assigned us Joe Mullins, who did a very good job helping them. And, of course, Bob Starnes spent some time. Claude was tied up on some very pressing problems at the time. And we had some, I'd say, 15 different pieces of material from the various unions and the Union Labor Department and the Education Department of AFL-CIO, and some, I'd say, 10, 12,000 quantities, plus about that many different souvenirs that were donated by the various organizations. And by Friday noon, it was all just about right. In this, we had these litter bags, these attractive litter bags. Well, in order to be sure that they got some of this loot as they registered, and as we propagandized them orally, we sacked this stuff, see. Well, we ran out of sacks, and I ordered 2,000 more just plain white bags. That's one of the items that we hadn't yet been billed for, see. Well, they was gone by Friday, see. So I'd say we registered. I haven't had time to file the cards. They all in a box. We registered approximately 10,000 people, I would say. Some got material that didn't register. Some says, well, I never won anything. I won't register. We had 53 people, I believe, that won nice prizes, including things all the way from a can opener to enough Masonite's finest material, including 2 doors to do a complete room. That was a grand prize. A set automobile tire was the second grand prize Saturday night. And the people were just completely shocked out of their boots that this really turned out to be a real thing, see. The old lady come up and looked at the tire. An old lady over in Rankin County wanted a tire. She looked at him and said, told Caroll, and said, well, I'll be dog, that is a set of tires, isn't it? She said, why, certain. And we began to think we was going to have to call her and ask her if she was going to claim them before she ever come back after them, see.
Send her old man over here.
And the guy that won the Masonite, he was just flabbergasted. He just couldn't, lives here, just a young fellow. He just couldn't believe it. Guy won the suit of clothes. He was the same size as the suit we had, see. Just knocked him off of his rock. So, I mean, people, they just figured we were small, this bunch, you know, selling these vacation resorts in the Ozarks and junk, just a bunch of fast operators. But I think we really made 53 people really happy after all was said and done. And made a lot of friends with people that I pointed out to them as they passed that they were looking at union members, their friends and neighbors that maybe they lived next door to them, behind the booth there as they passed by, see. And some of them were very nice, inquisitive, asked us what the words Mississippi AFL-CIO meant. Others turned their nose up, very few. We were real surprised. We had one or two sharpies that come by. One, actually, as a matter of fact, before the fire ever started, came in and tried to get a little nasty there one day. And nobody there but the carpenter and Joe Mullins and I. And the carpenter and I were up on ladders putting up the sign. First thing we know, we're being attacked by some nut, one of these nuts here, involves the APWR and the Klan and everything else you can think of. And he wanted to know right quick if we was going to wheel down there to integrate the fair. When he said that, if I'd have been in reach of him, I'd have broke his neck. But I was up on the ladder, see. And then he says, I said, what you mean, see? And he said, well, I noticed where you've been meeting with them in the hotel. I says, who told you? And when did we meet with them? With who? He says, well, niggers. I said, I reckon you think we're the only ones meet with them, right? And I said, do you see any now? No. I said, did it ever occur to you, my friend, that 30% of the labor movement in this state are black? Did it ever occur to you that we represent all people regardless of their race, creed, or color? Well, he hadn't thought about that, see. About that time, I was really getting wound up. And, so we cut that conversation pretty short. But he kept us under surveillance the entire time. He come by, he talked with various others. I didn't talk to him because we'd already talked to him.
Well, I made it a point.
Claude finally got around to meeting the cat, I think it was on Friday night maybe down there, wasn't it?
B.R. Upton introduced me to him. I'll tell you who he is. His name is Gartin. He ran for the legislature here one time, and he's publishing this Reservoir News, the little publication he's got. And Upton introduced me to him there that night, and I said, well, I'm sure glad to meet you. Of course, he knew who I was right off the bat, you see. Started telling me about the fact that he run for the legislature, and how many votes he got. He's one of these conservatives, so forth. I said, well, now, that word conservative means a lot of things to a lot of different people. I said, now, I'm conservative on some issues myself. Now, let's explain yourself. What do you mean you're conservative? I said, now, you run for the legislature. I want to know what your position is on this item, and this one. Do you believe that the tax load in this state should be carried by the people best able to pay or not? What's your position on unemployment insurance? How do you feel about workman's compensation? Now, let's talk about these items and we'll determine who's conservative, you see. Well, he left me. But anyhow, I went around to see his booth. He wanted me to see his booth. I wound up subscribing to his publication. Right.
He told.
Anyhow, the fair booth was a tremendous success. We think that it needs to be continued. Now, I got a number of other items, and if you would like, I'd like to move on. You think you've discussed this
I think
enough?
that's about it.
Yeah. We got some very good cooperation from the local unions all over the state, and we're very appreciative of that. Of course, ACWA, your plants and everything you did, really made it with all these giveaway articles and stuff, along with the others. Now, Cal, did you bring the correspondence on the request for the records of the council? We don't need that. We don't need it. Anyhow, I can explain
Got
it
it
to
in your
them.
file, it's in your file, did you bring your file?
I didn't bring that file. I got my briefcase, but the file has got that other stuff in it over there. But we don't have to read it. This is the situation. I've I've received correspondence during the past few months from two universities, one University of Wisconsin and the other in the history department at Ole Miss, wanting records of our conventions and pertinent material and stuff like this. And of course we've got only one file on the old records of the organization, and the only way that I think that we can make them available is we'd let them photostat them. If you don't see anything wrong, we couldn't turn them over to them and let them have them, period, because I think we need to maintain this file ourselves. Now, I received correspondence from the university library department, I think it was about 2 years ago, and we put them on our mailing list, and we mail them our convention proceedings, the current proceedings. I went back and dug up some back issues where they could have, starting about 1960, I think, was able to come up with that. But the old records, we only have the file copies now. We don't have additional copies.
I'd be interested to know how they use this. What use do they?
They want this for research purposes. You've got students that are writing papers on the history and development of the labor movement in the state.
And they furnish them this material.
And this stuff is placed in the library for research purposes. This is really what it's about.
This Wisconsin University is supposed to be well known for its collection of labor
Labor.
history. I mean, labor files. It has commas and different top labor.
Yeah, they got quite an assortment there.
And people come to that university for
Seeking
that
labor information.
So I don't know. The only thing that I could see that we could do here, if you don't see anything wrong, is I've invited them to come by and we'd look this thing over and see what it is they want. Now, this Wisconsin thing
They
wants
want
copies of everything we've got. And of course, some of these things I'd be reluctant to let them have,
Sure.
especially some of the current items we've got. We don't particularly care about people knowing about and making public and so forth, you see. Do you see anything wrong with us talking to the university, especially the one in Mississippi, about if they want to come down and photostat the records we have? We'd be glad to make them available. But I don't see how we can do anything else.
Our records include the records of convention, include all resolutions.
Most of them do. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's in the
really,
proceedings.
this is where their interest would be.
I would think so.
They don't care anything
Yeah.
about daily activity.
Yeah.
No, they want to know what resolutions and what.
That's right.
Well, I
progress.
don't see nothing wrong with it. Providing that, like you say,
Yeah.
photostat them.
Yeah. We, I think I told this fellow at the University of Mississippi, you know, that for him to come by sometime, we'd take a look at them and see what we had. I think it's good that we got somebody here in the state, something like this. I'm interested in cooperating with them more so than the people in Wisconsin.
I don't think that any of their business would be subsidized the National AFL-CIO.
No, I think this would be detrimental, actually.
So, too.
Yeah.
After all, this is not really an
Right.
activity of the
Right.
Council. Well, this is a part of the financial records. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
released to anybody anyway.
Right.
In my opinion. I'll tell you this, if the universities would use this material the way they should, and it
Yeah.
would come out with a different type thinking with some of these folks passing through them, I'd be
Yeah.
very much in favor of it. But if they used it for any other purpose, then I
Yeah.
might want to have some second thought.
Right.
I think they need to be influenced, and if we don't influence them, then the other group is, then
That's right. Well, if we don't have any objections, then I will continue to communicate with these people, and what we'll do is make available to them those records for public consumption that we think appropriate. This is the way we'll handle it.
it don't
This needs
deal with the
improvement.
confidential
Right.
nature of the council,
Right.
right?
If we don't have any objections, then we'll proceed in this fashion, okay? You got 30 minutes before you have to leave, Ms. Evelyn, so I'm gonna try to
About
get
20
the
or
items
25.
taken care of here before you leave that we'll need action on. On this meeting tomorrow, the organizing conference, we need to decide, I think, whether or not we want any press coverage on it. Now, this is what I've done. I've invited several people to this meeting that's not actually members of the labor movement for observation purposes. For instance, we got several groups here in this town, that lawyer civil rights issues. And I thought it would be good to invite some of them in to sit in and listen to, and whereby they would understand that people other than Negroes were involved in civil rights, namely union organizers. Might be educational for them, see. I've invited the director of the Council on Human Relations to sit in on it because of the implications of this whole thing, and to show them that the race problem is not the only problem in the state, see. Then I've invited the executive director of the Young Democrats, to Bob Boyd, who a lot of you know is a real fine fellow, to also sit in. And I've asked him this. Now, he's a journalistic student, finished school at Ole Miss, and he's a very good writer. And I've told him that I don't know whether we want any publicity or not, but there's a good possibility we will want something coming out of this meeting. So I've asked him to attend and be prepared to write a story about this conference if we deem it appropriate. Understand? But I haven't told him we would. I thought this was a decision for this group here to make as to whether or not we want to publicize the conference. You might want to wait and see what the thinking of the body is before you make this decision. You see, this group, it might be that they might feel that we might show our hand too much if we publicize it.
I think it'd be pretty hard to determine without knowing how big a coverage and how far they're going to go with some of this stuff.
Yeah.
I'd certainly be in a better position to weigh that
You
after
wanna
I've
wait?
heard the conference. Now,
Well, now you see, this is one reason we've asked you to come in and attend this conference, because I think it's going to be possible, necessary to make some decisions in the name of this council, in the course of this thing. So what we can do, and we might want to feel this conference out, is to some of the key people, for instance, your organization, say they decide to go into court with the Durant thing, do they want it publicized or not?
They probably wouldn't. See, this is the point, because
see?
then you give the other side the ammunition.
So anyhow, you don't see anything wrong with having this boy sit in the meeting, and he'll do whatever we want him to. You see?
I don't see anything wrong with that.
Right.
Right.
And then we'll make this decision about publicity before this conference is over. They want, in other words, we're not publicizing in advance. It might be that we'll want a release out of here when it's over with.
Well, see, you could have an organizer or some lawyer get up and talk about a case that he's presently in process, and if something got out on that, it could be very detrimental.
Right. Okay, so we'll just let this one hang fire until. And keep in mind, it might be necessary for us to call another meeting of the committee before the conference is over.
In other words, I'm thinking back, Claude, I remember the last such meeting, Dixon Piles gave quite a coverage to this IBEW thing at Mendenhall, and I think if that had got in the press, it'd have hurt his case considerable.
Yeah.
Because he was going pretty far that day as to say exactly what he planned to do,
Yeah. Well, you'll be interested in knowing that we're expecting a very good turnout to this conference. So we had a preliminary meeting this morning with the organizing department and checked over our records. It looked like we're going to have at least 30 international unions represented here. And I'm expecting at least 100 people in attendance. We've got some of the local CLUs and some of the local people interested in organizing are going to come also. And we've got quite a few attorneys already here. Some will be in the night and others in the morning. And we've been working on the agenda for the last few days. What we'll do is to handle the legal end of this problem in the beginning, and then try to put together a coordinated campaign next. It's going to be an interesting 2 days, and if they'll agree, we will have a night session tomorrow night for a couple of hours, and then try to get through around noon Sunday, where everybody can get out, those that having to travel, where they want to be late Sunday getting out, you see. That's what we're going to try to do. All right. I want to review with you, just briefly. It would take a couple of hours to go into it in detail with you. But I'm sure that you folks have been reading in the press the last few weeks this controversy centered around CDGM, the refunding of CDGM, a Child Development Group, an OEO program, and the fact that another group has been put together known as MAP, headed up by Owen Cooper, which in effect is replacing CDGM. I don't know if our people have got the implications of what's going on or not, but I think I need to take a few minutes with you to explain to you what's happening in order that you will be in a position to explain a few things to the members of our organization. And I've been debating with myself as to whether I should do a communication out to everybody or not. Maybe you can advise me of this. CDGM project has been controversial from the beginning because it was put together by the snake-oriented people more than anything else. And of course, you're familiar with some of the shortcomings.
Freedom Democrats and Delta Ministries agreed.
And back about the 1st of September, Sergeant Shriver called a meeting of some people in Washington and advised them that CDGM would not be refunded, and asked them if they would help put together another group to save the program. Aaron Henry was in this group. I attended a meeting in Clarksdale of the Voter Restoration Group that's afternoon of that same day when Henry came back and advised me of the meeting and what he had been requested to do. And I thought at that time it was a little bit strange that I had been contacted and invited to the Washington meeting because of our activity with the National Party and all this stuff, and the fact that the conference group had met with Shriver on this stuff. Of course, this was the first news I had, so it just hit me kind of cold, and I told Henry, I said, well, Aaron, this is something you'd better be extremely careful with, because if you get out now and try to put together another new group, I said, the CDGM crowd's going to crawl on you and give you credit for destroying CDGM. This was my immediate first reaction. And he had called out a list of people that was under consideration about putting a group together, a new group together, and I was on the list, along with Owen Cooper. And this was the last I heard from the idea of putting together a new group. Then things began to happen later on. A story broke in the Jackson Daily News about the map being organized and charted in the governor's office. Charter issued to Owen Cooper, Harding Gartin, and Leroy Percy. And that a new board had been put together and named them. I think y'all probably read this story.
Yeah, I saw it.
And listed Aaron Henry as being co-chairman along with Cooper and a number of other NAACP officials, Negro leaders. And my phone began to ring, and for 2 weeks I stayed on the phone practically day and night, and this was what Tom was talking about, being tied up in the fair. This was mostly what it was about. Well, now this is what's happening. The importance of this thing and the implications have to be pointed out to our membership in order that they understand. The business community has now made its move to make peace with the Negro leadership in this state at the expense of the trade union movement. This is the reason that Claude Ramsey wasn't invited in on this deal to start with. Owen Cooper has fought us all the way, as all of you know. See? And he told the people in Washington that he would not have anything to do with any program that Claude Ramsey was associated with. And this is the reason that I heard nothing else from anybody about the new organization. And it might be just as well it happened this way. See? But the thing that we've got to get across to our members now is it's happening just as I've been trying to tell them it was going to happen. That the business community is going to move. They're going to make peace with the Negroes at our expense. They're going to continue to fight this labor movement to the bitter end. And here we've got it. The president of the State Chamber of Commerce is now on a board of an organization made up of the top Negro leaders in the NAACP. And that board now is being referred to in this state as a blue ribbon board. Did you get the implications of this one?
Don't forget the dollars.
Don't forget the dollars involved.
Business in the state of Mississippi. The largest dollar volume of business in the state of Mississippi.
Right. I just wanted to review this with you. Now, this is what I've done, and I'm continuing to do it, as to do everything that I possibly can to keep this organization from being turned into an anti-labor group. And the Negroes on this board have assured me it will not happen. Now, we got Wilson Evelyn on the board, a Negro labor leader out of out of Gulfport, who all of you probably know. And of course, he keeps me informed. And we got influence on the board even though we didn't appoint somebody on there. And Cooper's got his work cut out for him, I can tell you this.
Well, Carter shouldn't be adverse
Right,
to us.
right,
Carter
right.
should
He's
be
our
in the right
friend,
camp.
too.
I mean,
But the thing I'm getting at is this now. I want you to remember this about all of the hell that's been raised about my participation with some of these Negro groups, you see.
yeah.
How many of our people have got the implication of what's happening now? And this is what I've been trying to tell them. This is one reason I've been doing what I've been doing. And it's been a tough one. Of course, I've sent Shriver a couple of wires, and that last wire I sent Shriver, I laid it on the line about the fact that the state AFL-CIO had not been called upon to place a representative on this group, and pointed out the fact that Cooper had a long record of opposition to the trade union movement. I was invited to make an appearance before the CCAP group in Washington that had this thing under consideration. And I laid this whole thing out for them. CDGM is just a small fraction of the total picture. This is an effort on the part of the business community to restructure the Democratic Party with an alignment of business people and Negroes. Make it anti-labor, if you please. You get the implication?
Mississippi.
Right.
Yeah.
At our expense.
Or whatever you
Now, I've got a file this thick. I've got a record of everything that's took place in this whole controversy. I've loaned it to Bill Minor, who's going to do a story, and I had everything there, and he wouldn't have to do any research. He could go through my file, but it's that thick. I've got it all there. Now, I don't know, this might be in that meeting in Washington. Mr. Cooper did a record, sent out to all of his 300 of his employees in Pascagoula last spring in an organizing campaign. He cut a record and mailed it to all of them. We took that record over to Tom's house before I went to Washington, took the tape recorded and made 3 recordings of that record, and I left it with him in Washington.
It's a doozy. You all hear it.
We might play it in the course of this conference. It's 15 minutes is what it is. But if this matter comes up now I've got the file, all the clippings, everything that showed up. I think I'll reproduce, especially that first one, shows the board. I've already sent out some of it to some people where this problem crops up with the rednecks in our own groups. Here it is, you see, the business community. Now, what do you think we should do? What are we supposed to do now? If this don't open the eyes of these people of ours, I don't know what it's going to take. But I tell you frankly, I think that this might be good from a long-range point of view. The business community can solve this thing quicker than anybody else anyhow. Once you get this racial thing out of the way, we can start dealing with the really economic issues in this state where that race issue is not transcending everything. Maybe we can start making some progress.
The general reaction to that thing, Claude, that I found is that, and some of our own members feels this way, that it's fine that CDGM got booted out. That they was outsiders anyway. At now it's in the hands of good Mississippi folks. That's a reaction, I'm telling
They
you.
overlook the fact that Cooper's anti-labor, huh?
Right.
This is what's going to tell the story.
Yeah.
This is a reaction.
The niggers is in this for jobs.
Hmm?
The Negro is in
Yeah.
this for some jobs.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Some jobs.
You better believe it.
Yeah, yeah.
Now then, just let some of our good people watch them start floating these colored people in on these jobs.
Sure.
This
Yeah.
is going to be the hour.
Yeah,
Now,
this is it.
Who is the integrationist?
Yeah. I tell you something else I've done too, that you should be made aware of, and I did it for the same reason, jobs. They organized an urban league in this town recently, and the purpose of that urban league is to provide Negroes with jobs. And I've agreed to serve on that board because I don't want that urban league out here trying to train people and put them on jobs of our members. That's one of the major reasons for me getting on this board, to try to steer this thing in the right direction. You see? I hope these people can understand what it's all about. As I understand it, a few people's kicked the traces already about the fact that I showed up on this board. I'm gonna make the CWA meet here in Jackson before long, because one or two members have wanna know what the hell's Claude Ramsey doing on this integrated group, you see? See what I mean? But I tell you, you gotta watch yourself now. Things are moving so fast you'll get run over. How is that situation in Forest County? in Asbury?
You mean on this poverty thing?
Yeah.
Oh, we finally got a grant, survey grant of $40,000, and we're applying for a Head Start grant of $500,000.
Yeah.
And I think we'll be granted, but the old CDGM bunch is fighting.
Well, of course
Our
they don't.
particular group.
CDGM
But,
doesn't want to participate in community action. They want a program of their own.
But this is because they're getting advice from people like Lawrence Giot to do it that way.
I guess so. I don't
I
know.
guess so. I was at a meeting where I heard
Or
him
he
tell them
advised
that. Yeah. I got first-hand information on what he's telling them. I heard it.
They won't run it all by itself, and they want most of it to be Negro, see. They won't cut the whites out.
But we've done quite well there.
Yeah.
Of course, now I understand that.
I'm not talking about your board. How did you come out on that?
Well,
fight that you?
Well, we're balancing the board, and we're holding about 5 more elections in certain beats, and I'm pretty sure some more Negroes will make it to the board. Probably some of the CDGM group. But the thing that's real interesting in that situation now is that the chief of the colonels for the governor has decided that maybe our charter is not legal, and they may just withdraw that thing. He's had a lawyer write us a letter to that effect that he don't think it was properly constituted. So.
Do we have anything else?
Lord, I mean to tell you,
Do any of you have anything that you want to bring up before the meeting? I think the proper thing for us to do is to recess this meeting to a later call during the course of the conference instead of adjourning. Because I think that we'll probably have several things we might need to act on in the course of it.
Let me ask a question, Claude,
Yeah.
while we cut off the tape. The action you're taking on the fair here while we're rushing through. Am I right in construing your meaning here that we should proceed, and my thoughts previously were that sometime during this next 2 days, while probably all the members that served on this committee will be here anyway, to call a meeting and review what we did and what we think needs to be done. Is that the general thinking of y'all? And go from that? Is that what? And I think probably we need to add some other people in order to get representation from other unions to this committee in the future. Is that what y'all had in mind primarily by authorizing this again?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Wanted to
And I guess, of course, you also give us the authority to spend a little more money for space
Sure.
and what have you.
Well,
Yeah.
my idea was if you didn't get this in early, you might not get the proper
Well, I
space.
think this is what I'm thinking, Jim, is that there might be a move made to keep us from getting that space. We
Very
need to
well
nail
could.
it down right away. We shook them up with that booth this time, the manufacturers, huh?
That's a good location.
Very good.
Yeah, very good.
Very
the
good.
thing to do is get that nailed down before they can
Take
start.
one
You
more
could just
space.
get one
You see,
more
we
stall added
one
to
more
it.
See, we reserved this last January, and